Chapter 141. Ning Shu became Qi Sheng's personal maid. She brought the brewed tea to Qi Sheng's study. When she opened the door and walked in, she saw that Qi Sheng was busy. As the heir of the family business, Qi Sheng was very busy. But he still took the time to flirt with Mu Yanluo. Later his true love came. And he flirted with his true love. He didn't seem to be busy at all. Ning Shu put the teacup in Qi Sheng's hand. Qi Sheng glanced at the teacup, and then looked at Ning Shu. Ning Shu immediately opened his mouth and smiled at Qi Sheng, saying, "Young master, please have some tea." "Didn't anyone tell you that I drink warm tea?" Qi Sheng said indifferently. "I'm sorry, this servant just came and didn't know very well. How about this servant make it again?" Ning Shu's face was full of guilt. She quickly picked up the teacup and carelessly poured the boiling hot tea into Qi Sheng's hand. It was boiling hot tea. She poured the freshly brewed tea into Qi Sheng's hand. "What are you doing?" Qi Sheng frowned tightly. He was in some pain, and his hand turned red in an instant. Ning Shu felt even more guilty. She quickly took out a handkerchief and wiped Qi Sheng's hand. As soon as Ning Shu took out the handkerchief, Qi Sheng immediately smelled the fragrance of flowers mixed with the smell of stinky feet. The fragrance and stench were mixed together. Qi Sheng was about to vomit on the spot. He quickly covered the maid's nose with his hand, but his hand was wiped by the handkerchief, and there was a stench. Qi Sheng quickly ran out of the room. Ning Shu curled his lips, threw the handkerchief into the teacup, and left with the teacup. Ning Shu returned to the room. Yuelan immediately asked Ning Shu, "Miss, did he make things difficult for you?" "No, your miss can do anything. How could he make things difficult for her?" Ning Shu said with his legs crossed. Yuelan was very distressed. "Miss is the Prime Minister's daughter. She has a golden branch and jade leaf, but now she has to serve someone. Miss, this servant is pitiful." "All right, stop howling. Your miss is fine," Ning Shu said snappily. Yuelan immediately shut her mouth and sobbed. She felt very wronged. Although Ning Shu disgusted Qi Sheng still let Ning Shu continue to be his personal maidservant. Even if Ning Shu always made mistakes and was ugly, Qi Sheng still insisted that Ning Shu be his maidservant. Even when Ning Shu was serving Qi Sheng, his snot got into the food. When Qi Sheng was bathing, Ning Shu walked in casually and poured a bucket of hot water into the bathtub. It was so hot that Qi Sheng jumped up and ran around the house naked. Moreover, Ning Shu's body always smelled like stinky feet, which was especially unbearable for Qi Sheng. However, Qi Sheng was still able to endure it. This made Ning Shu sigh. The attraction between the male and female leads was simply too strong. "What is the smell on your body?" Qi Sheng finally couldn't help but ask. Ning Shu stared at Qi Sheng with his heavily eyeshadow eyes and said happily, "This is the fragrance of osmanthus. This servant uses this fragrance to smoke the handkerchief on my clothes every day. Young master, do you smell it? Is it very fragrant?" Ning Shu said as he put the handkerchief in front of Qi Sheng. Qi Sheng turned his head and frowned. Ning Shu said, "Actually, you are already very fragrant. There is no need for incense at all. This incense will destroy the fresh smell on your body." Ning Shu. Oh, look at how good he was at talking. A profiteer was indeed a profiteer. He obviously couldn't stand the mixed smell of feet and flowers on her body, but he still insisted on saying that it was a fresh smell. The original owner was deceived by him like this. On the outside he was gentle and elegant, but on the inside, he was extremely black-bellied. Ning Shu grinned and laughed. His bloody mouth was even bigger, which was simply unbearable to look at. Qi Sheng turned her head away. After a while she turned her head back. Ning Shu said, "Of course it is beautiful. This makeup is not good for your skin. Besides, you are still young. This makeup will only cover up your original beauty." In fact, Qi Sheng's heart was itching. She suddenly wanted to wash this woman's face clean and see what she looked like. Ning Shu raised his thick eyebrows, covered his heart and said, "Baby's heart is bitter, but baby won't say it." "Aren't you called Xiaohong? Why are you called baby again?" Qi Sheng asked doubtfully. Ning Shu waved his hand and said, "Don't worry about these details. This servant's appearance is very similar to this servant's father. Because I am ugly, I use beautiful makeup to cover up my ugliness. Young master, you don't know how bitter this servant's heart is. This servant doesn't dare to remove my makeup at night. I am afraid that when I wake up at night, I will be mistaken for a ghost. Ningshu touched his face narcissistically and said, Fortunately, someone taught me the art of makeup. Now that I put on makeup, this servant is much more confident. Qi Sheng's face trembled and she couldn't speak. Your appearance is given by your parents. You shouldn't be so disdainful. You don't have to be like this when you are with me. I won't dislike your appearance. In the future, you don't have to put on such troublesome makeup. Naturally, you will be the most beautiful. Qi Sheng's eyes were very sincere, giving people the feeling that he was trustworthy. These words were truly heartwarming. Ningshu truly understood how Mu Yanluo felt at that time. She was riddled with wounds. Suddenly, there was such a warm man, who was willing to accept her all the unbearable things, willing to accept her painful past. At that time, Mu Yanluo was so moved, but the result was cruel. Under this warm appearance, there was a strong utilitarian purpose and plunder. He wanted to get Mu Yanluo's heart and conquer it. Just like doing business, he captured people's hearts. Understanding people's hearts allowed him to smoothly obtain Mu Yanluo. Only when Mu Yanluo was hanging on by a breath and disappeared did Qi Sheng understand his feelings for Mu Yanluo. Ningshu felt like the whole zoo was in chaos. Many thanks for young master's concern, but this servant's heart is too inferior. Without this makeup, this servant cannot go out. Only with this makeup can this servant have the confidence to face life bravely. Ningshu said gratefully. Qi Sheng's face twitched. Why did he feel that this girl was sick? Did she not have eyes? Did she not look in the mirror? It was good that she was like this. Qi Sheng waved his hand weakly and said, As long as you are happy. Ningshu immediately said, Young master, you are really a good person. Qi Sheng was speechless. Qi Sheng's eyes scraped over Ningshu's face inch by inch. According to his many years of identifying beauties, this girl should not be bad-looking. Why did she make herself like this? Qi Sheng suddenly said to Ningshu, I heard that there is a meeting tonight. You go with young master. Wash your face. It's dark at night. No one can see what you look like. There is no need to put on such makeup. Ningshu was speechless. Qi Sheng was now very interested in her true colors. Ningshu smiled shyly and said very innocently, Oh, it's so late. My mother said that I can't go out at night. Qi Sheng was speechless. Chapter 142. Qi Sheng's intention to make Ningshu wash his face naturally fell through. Qi Sheng's eyes wandered over Ningshu's face. Finally, he said indifferently, Since you don't want to, then forget it. I heard there are many beautiful lanterns. Ningshu was not interested in lanterns. One who was unaccountably solicitous was hiding evil intentions. What she needed to do was not to be pushed down by Qi Sheng, let alone be conquered by Qi Sheng's sugar-coated bullets. Then, she would wait for Qi Sheng's true love to come back. Ningshu's days in the Qi mansion were very comfortable. Qi Sheng was an imperial merchant, and his family's money was even worse. His food, clothing, housing and transportation were all top-notch. Even the food and clothes for his servants were not bad. At night, Qi Sheng actually ran to Ningshu's room. Yuelon looked at Qi Sheng with vigilance and said bluntly, What are you doing here? Are you coveting my young miss? Ningshu smiled at Qi Sheng and asked, Young master, do you have something to tell me? There's a lantern festival tonight. I need to take my servant with me. You can come with me. Qi Sheng looked at Ningshu with gentleness and expectation in his eyes. It made people unable to refuse him. It was as if refusing him was a cruel thing. Ningshu said indifferently, Young master, I'll go. Okay, you tidy up. I'll wait for you outside. Qi Sheng's face showed a smile. He stood up and walked out. Yuelon made a face at Qi Sheng's back and said, Young miss, do you really want to go? Take me with you. This person doesn't seem to have good intentions. Ningshu nodded and began to put on makeup in front of the mirror. Then, she changed her clothes and went out. Yuelon stared at Ningshu with her eyes wide open. She said with a trembling voice, Young miss, why can't you figure it out? Ningshu nodded and walked towards Qi Sheng in the courtyard. Qi Sheng was very pretentious as he faced a tree and put on makeup under the tree. Ningshu stood behind Qi Sheng and said shyly, Young master, I'm done. Qi Sheng turned around and looked at Ningshu. His eyes widened in an instant, and he was speechless for a long time. Ningxu blinked his dark eyes and looked shy. Young master, am I pretty? Qi Sheng swallowed a mouthful of saliva. His Adam's apple rolled up and down, and the expression on his face cracked. He said with difficulty, your aesthetic sense is really different from ordinary people. She had a pair of black eyes, and her face was covered in makeup. Her mouth was red, and she was wearing a bright red top and a green skirt. Qi Sheng simply did not know how to describe it. Ningxu looked at Qi Sheng's expression as if his eyes had been raped and felt very happy. See if I don't disgust you to death. Her eyes had turned into two panda eyes, which were very dark. She was dressed in a vulgar red and green outfit, which was simply blinding. She felt great. Qi Sheng was a little impatient, and his tone was a little angry. He said, didn't I say that nature is the most beautiful? Why do you have to do this makeup? Everyone is unique. Why don't you dare to face yourself? Listen to young master. Hurry up and wash the stuff on your face. Qi Sheng's tone was sincere. You are my person. No one in city dares to laugh at you. Ningxu was speechless. Look at how hypocritical he was. He obviously disliked her appearance, and still said that he wanted to help her rebuild her confidence. Ningxu said, oh, I don't want to go later. I can't live without makeup. Please forgive me, young master. Ding abuse points 5. 2333's voice sounded in his head. Qi Sheng covered his chest. He was so angry that his chest was violently heaving up and down, and his face was a little green. Ningxu was very naive, and did not see that Qi Sheng was about to die from anger. He said very gratefully, young master, you are really a good person. I won't go later. Ningxu said and returned to his room. It was already so late. He might as well sleep comfortably in his bed. This time, Qi Sheng did not call him. He was probably furious. TSK, let's see how you can pretend to be gentle. Yuelon followed Ningxu into the room and said very approvingly, Miss should be like this. That person is obviously not a good person. After that, Qi Sheng did not mention anything about the Lantern Festival. However, his face did not look good. He was probably angry. Ningxu pretended that he did not see anything. In the end, Qi Sheng could not bear it anymore. Ningxu said helplessly, you little girl. The doting and sweet tone in his voice made Ningxu shiver. Damn, he had goosebumps all over his body. The plot was too abrupt. There was no substantial development between her and Qi Sheng. How could he talk to her in such a tone? Ningxu looked at Qi Sheng with a pair of dazed eyes. What was wrong with this guy? Qi Sheng reached out and wanted to hold Ningxu's hand. Ningxu took Qi Sheng's hand first. Qi Sheng suddenly felt that his hand was wrapped in a lump of lard. It was greasy and sticky, and it felt very disgusting. Qi Sheng pulled her hand back and quickly wiped it with a handkerchief. However, she did not dare to hold Ningxu's hand again. Ningxu looked at Qi Sheng with a shy expression and asked, young master, do you have something to say? Qi Sheng looked at Ningxu with a kind of understanding, pity and lingering gaze, which made Ningxu's hair stand on end. Damn, if you have something to say, just say it. Why are you looking at me like that? I already know your identity. You have indeed suffered a lot before, Qi Sheng said. He looked at Ningxu with a look that said, I know everything. Ningxu, fuck you, speak human language. Ningxu looked confused and said very innocently, I don't understand what you're talking about, young master. Qi Sheng shook his head and said in a I'm hurt tone, you still don't believe me? Do you think I'm not trustworthy? You've been with me for a long time. Don't you know what kind of person I am? Ningxu listened to a series of yes, yes, yes and felt drunk. Besides, she had been with Qi Sheng for at most half a month. You still don't want to tell me the truth. I know your identity is Mu Yanluo, the daughter of Prime Minister Mu of Donghua Nation. Now General Situ and the regent are looking for you. You should be careful, Qi Sheng said very understandingly. Ningxu looked at Qi Sheng blankly. I don't know what you're talking about. Who is Mu Yanluo? I'm Xiaoheng, not Mu Yanluo. Qi Sheng frowned, and then relaxed. He said, you should be careful. If others ask you in the future, you have to deny it like this. But you can trust me. Your young master can be relied on. Ningxu nodded and said very gratefully, although I don't know what you're talking about, I still want to thank you. Yanluo, can you reveal your true face to me? I want to remember your real face, Qi Sheng said very affectionately. This was his real purpose. Chapter 143. Although Ning Shu strongly denied that she was not Mu Yanluo, Qi Sheng firmly believed that Ning Shu was Mu Yanluo, and looked at Ning Shu with curiosity and interest. Ning Shu did not pay attention to him at all. So what if Qi Sheng knew that he was Mu Yanluo? When his true love came back, he would immediately forget about her. Qi Sheng's various actions were just to flirt and enjoy the process of pursuing a woman. Once he got her, he would cherish her. Besides, there was still a cinnabar mole in his heart. He had someone he loved in his heart, yet he was still so unrestrained. He even went to a brothel and bought Mu Yanluo. He probably did not love his true love that much. Later on, he said that he did not love his true love anymore. It was because his kind true love was vicious and Mu Yanluo was kinder, so he fell in love with Mu Yanluo. Was this love? Because you are vicious, I don't love you anymore. I really misjudged you before. Since learning that Ning Shu was Mu Yanluo, Qi Sheng obviously treated Ning Shu much better. Qi Sheng did not let Ning Shu do many things that a maid should do. It was as if he was treating Ning Shu like a young lady. As for Qi Sheng's actions, Ning Shu did not let him do any work. Ning Shu drank tea and strolled around the garden every day. He was very carefree. Not long after, Qi Sheng's true love would come back. This true love, who was gentle and amiable on the outside, was evil on the inside. She disfigured the original owner and had mottled traces on her body. It could be said that she was vicious and merciless. She was a perfect example of a vicious female supporting character. Ning Shu was speechless. She was supposed to be such a character, but instead, she became the miserable female lead. What kind of mission was this? Not long after, Ning Shu saw Qi Sheng's face was full of joy. Her whole body was shrouded in pink bubbles. Ning Shu knew that the female supporting character was coming. Yanluo, Yufei is coming back. Qi Sheng said to Ning Shu. What does it have to do with me? Ning Shu asked with a puzzled expression. Who is Yufei? Qi Sheng looked at Ning Shu's panda eyes and said with melancholy. She's the woman I've loved for a long time. I don't even know how long I've loved her. She's so beautiful. Now that she's come to me, it feels like a dream. Ning Shu immediately opened his bloody mouth and said with a smile. Congratulations, young master. Qi Sheng wanted to reach out and hold Ning Shu's hand, but when she thought of the feeling of his hand, she didn't dare to compliment him. Ning Shu said, although Yufei is back, I will still protect you. You don't have to worry. Yufei is very kind. Even if she knows your identity, she will still protect you. Ning Shu, what the fuck? Was he trying to grab her with both hands? His true love had already returned, yet he was still giving her a guarantee. Ning Shu felt that he had learned something new. He was too timing. It was normal. In the original plot, before his true love, Li Yufei came back, Mu Yanluo and Qi Sheng had already done it. Qi Sheng had already gotten what he wanted. How could what he got compare to what he didn't get? Now, Ning Shu and Qi Sheng didn't even have an ambiguous relationship. Even if there was an ambiguous relationship, it was one-sided by Qi Sheng. Qi Sheng naturally comforted her. He wasn't an ordinary scum. Mu Yanluo was tortured to death by these men. In the end, she could still live happily with them. She felt drunk. Ning Shu looked at Qi Sheng with a pair of scattered eyes and said sincerely, Congratulations, young master. Congratulations on having a son. Qi Sheng. Sometimes Qi Sheng wondered if this woman was really Mu Yanluo. It was so confusing. However, one of the masters and servants on the wanted poster was Yuelan. Could it be that the one named Yuelan was Mu Yanluo? But Yuelan really couldn't be called a great beauty. Qi Sheng had heard of Mu Yanluo, the #1 beauty of Donghua. However, his identity was destined to be unworthy. But now, Mu Yanluo was standing in front of him. Qi Sheng wanted to wash away the inexplicable thing on her face with a bucket of water. She was driving him to death at any moment. Then go and decorate Yufei's room. Young master believes in your taste. Qi Sheng did this just to make Ning Shu jealous. However, Ning Shu wasn't jealous at all. Instead, he said happily, Young master, don't worry. I'll definitely do it properly. Qi Sheng suddenly thought of the smell on Ning Shu's body and his red and green clothes. His taste was really unflattering. Qi Sheng quickly said, "You haven't done this at home. You don't have to do it. I'll arrange for someone to do it. You're not used to doing this kind of rough work." Of course, Ningxu knew what Qi Sheng was thinking. Qi Sheng was afraid that she would ruin it. However, Ningxu's face showed an attentive smile as she said, "Let this servant do something for Miss Yufei. Perhaps this servant and Miss Yufei will become sisters in the future." Become sisters? Qi Sheng looked at Ningxu and thought about the meaning of Ningxu's words. It should be what he hoped. Qi Sheng stepped forward and wanted to hold Ningxu's hand, but he stopped himself and said happily, "Yufei is very kind. You'll definitely become good sisters." "Bah, you're dreaming. Such a person could become the male lead." Ningxu felt that his worldview was broken. If she was kind, then she would accept all kinds of things. If she didn't agree or accept, then she wasn't kind. Oh my, when was kindness defined like this? Hee. Every time he saw Qi Sheng's deep affection and gentleness, Ningxu wanted to poke his eyes blind. It was really disgusting. Ningxu disdained Qi Sheng to death. Therefore, Ningxu's purpose was to be a matchmaker and let Qi Sheng and true love be together forever. Ningxu took Yuelan to prepare a room for his true love. Yuelan shook the quilt and said, "Miss, I'm a pitiful miss. I'm a noble, but I have to do the work of a servant. If master knew, he would be very distressed." It was unknown where Prime Minister Mu was enjoying his life. There was pitifully little ink. He was just a passerby. Ningxu took down the simple and elegant mosquito net and replaced it with an exaggerated style. The colors were red and green. All kinds of colors were messy and dazzling. It showed that she strongly welcomed the female lead. It was unknown what kind of expression the elegant and gentle female lead would have when she saw such a dazzling room. Yuelan looked at the entire room and rubbed her eyes. "Miss, when did you like these colors? This? After experiencing so much, your miss realized that the colors of life should be colorful. It should be rich and colorful." Ningxu clapped his hands and said. After Ningxu finished decorating the room, Qi Sheng wanted to go in and take a look. After all, it was his heart's cinnabar mole. He was still at the stage of pleasing Li Yufei. He was afraid that Ningxu would mess things up. "Young master, please believe in me. I will definitely give Miss Yufei a big surprise." Ningxu stubbornly refused to let Qi Sheng go in. Qi Sheng tapped Ningxu's nose and said dotingly, "Your young master naturally believes in you." Fuck, he didn't want his claws anymore. Chapter 144. Under Qi Sheng and Ningxu's expectations, June finally came. Qi Sheng and Ningxu waited for Li Yufei at the entrance of the Qi mansion. A carriage came and stopped in front of Ningxu and Qi Sheng. Then, the curtain was lifted, revealing a pair of white hands. Ningxu stared at the hands, wanting to see what Li Yufei looked like. In the end, it was a maid with 2 buns on her head. After the maid got out of the carriage, a pair of white, slender, beautiful and elegant hands reached out and rested on the maid's hands. Ningxu felt that Qi Sheng, who was next to him, was very excited. His eyes were fixed on the carriage. A woman in light yellow clothes bent down and came out of the carriage. She helped the maid's hands out of the carriage and slowly walked towards them. Her posture was elegant and beautiful like a painting. She had a perfect oval face and a smile on the corner of her mouth. She looked elegant and beautiful. She was feminine, gentle and amiable. Looking at her made people want to protect her. Qi Sheng had good taste. If it wasn't for Mu Yanluo, Li Yufei would probably have maintained a kind and gentle appearance. However, under the catalysis of jealousy, Li Yufei became a ruthless and vicious woman and disfigured Mu Yanluo. Before Li Yufei came over, Qi Sheng excitedly walked over and held Li Yufei's hand. With a smile on his face he said, "Yufei, you're here." Ningxu watched from the side. He felt that Qi Sheng liked to hold other people's hands very much. He grabbed women's hands whenever he saw them. In fact, he was a hooligan inside. Li Yufei's face showed a smile. She pulled her hand out and said, "Brother Sheng, my father asked me to say hello to you. How is uncle's health?" Qi Sheng looked at Li Yufei with a very gentle gaze. He wanted to make her pregnant. Li Yufei was a little embarrassed and blushed. The two looked at each other like this. Ningxu squeezed over with a pair of panda eyes. Li Yufei was shocked when she saw Ning Shu's face. Her voice was a little sharp as she asked, "Who are you?" Qi Sheng introduced her to Li Yufei enthusiastically. "This is Xiaohong. She decorated your room. She's my personal maid." When Li Yufei heard that her room was decorated by this ugly girl, who was beyond recognition, her heart trembled. Her face was already ruined, so what would her room look like? Then when she heard that it was Qi Sheng's personal maid, Li Yufei's face revealed an intimate smile. She said, "I've troubled little Hong." Ning Shu Li Yufei cracked her lips and revealed a terrifying smile. She said directly, "I heard that Miss Yufei is young master's beloved woman, so this servant tried her best to give Miss Yufei a surprise." When Ning Shu approached Li Yufei took a step back and covered her nose with a handkerchief. She said to Qi Sheng, "Brother Sheng, Yufei is a little tired. I want to rest." Qi Sheng had a gentle smile on his face. He said, "I'll take you to your room." Qi Sheng and Li Yufei walked side by side in the front. Ning Shu followed behind. When they reached the door, Qi Sheng pushed it open and said to Li Yufei, "Little Hong decorated this room especially for you." Li Yufei glanced around the room and felt that her whole body was stunned. Her face was wooden. Qi Sheng saw Li Yufei's expression and quickly turned his head. He saw that the room was colorful and inexplicable. The bead curtains were strung together in various colors. There was no order to it, and it was extremely ugly. There were also vases. They were all inferior and ugly. There were actually rapeseed flowers in the vases. The style was simply too strange. "Little Hong, what are you doing? Didn't I ask you to make the room more elegant? Is this how you do it?" Qi Sheng seemed to be really angry. After all, he had lost face in front of his bright moonlight cinnabar mole. Qi Sheng resented Ning Shu in his heart. Ding! Abuse points, 5. Current abuse points, 10. 2333's voice echoed in Ning Shu's mind. Why is this person's abuse point so low? Ning Shu also wanted to ask why it was so low. Qi Sheng looked gentle on the outside, but in fact, he was a very complicated and black-bellied person. After being questioned by Qi Sheng, Ning Shu's face quickly showed an aggrieved and innocent expression. He said, I'm sorry. It's all my fault. I tried my best to do things well. I'm sorry, I made Miss Yufei angry." Li Yufei's smile was a little difficult to maintain, but when she thought of the purpose of this trip, she endured it and said gently, "It's okay. Little Hong didn't know my habits before. It's okay to decorate like this." Ning Shu's face immediately showed a surprised smile. He stepped forward and grabbed Li Yufei's hand. He was very touched. "Miss Yufei, you are really a good person." Li Yufei suddenly felt an unbearable stench. His hands seemed to be oily and sweaty. When he held her hand, Li Yufei felt like she was going to vomit. God, what kind of person was this? How could Qi Sheng keep such a person by his side? It was so disgusting. Qi Sheng seemed to know Li Yufei's current mood. He quickly rescued Li Yufei from Ning Shu's hands. As soon as she broke away from Ning Shu's hand, Li Yufei quickly wiped her hand with a handkerchief. She looked like she was going to vomit. Ning Shu smiled very foolishly. He didn't see Li Yufei's disgust at all. "Go and let the kitchen prepare the food. You just need to tell them. You don't have to cook," Qi Sheng added. Qi Sheng knew how disgusting Ning Shu's cooking was. It was as disgusting as eating crane top hong. Ning Shu quickly said, "You really don't want me to help? Since Miss Yufei is here, this servant wants to make 2 of my signature dishes to welcome Miss Yufei." "No," Qi Sheng said quickly. Qi Sheng hurriedly said. He realized that his tone was too anxious, so he slowed down his voice and said gently, "No need. Yufei just arrived. She can't eat so much." When Li Yufei heard Qi Sheng's words, a subtle expression flashed across her face. She frowned. What did Qi Sheng mean? Did he not welcome her? Li Yufei said, "Little Hong, you really don't have to trouble yourself. Let the kitchen prepare something. I can't eat much." Ning Shu nodded and turned to leave. As soon as Ning Shu left, Qi Sheng and Li Yufei both breathed a sigh of relief. The smell of this woman was really disgusting. Li Yufei quietly sniffed the handkerchief and almost vomited. Qi Sheng pretended not to see Li Yufei's action and said gently to Li Yufei, "I'll let people redecorate the room later. I didn't expect little Hong to decorate the room like this. But little Hong is kind. Don't blame her. Qi Sheng subconsciously wanted Li Yufei to have a good impression of Ning Shu. Chapter 145. Hearing Qi Sheng's words, Li Yufei frowned imperceptibly, and then relaxed her brows. She smiled and tilted her head to look at Qi Sheng. She said mischievously, Brother Sheng, why do I feel that you're so good to this maid named Xiao Hong? Don't tell me you like her. Qi Sheng immediately looked at Li Yufei with bright and affectionate eyes. He reached out and tapped the tip of Li Yufei's nose. He said unhappily but dotingly, How can you say that about your brother Sheng? Don't you know what kind of person your brother Sheng is? Li Yufei wrinkled her nose and said, Brother Sheng, you didn't answer Yufei's question directly. Do you like that girl named Xiao Hong? If you really like her, I can help you. Qi Sheng shook his head and said firmly, Don't think too much. She's just my personal maid. Because she's too ugly, she always likes strange makeup. In fact, she's a pitiful person. Hearing that Xiao Hong was ugly, Li Yufei breathed a sigh of relief. After all, an ugly woman was not competitive. She had said so much before just to test whether Qi Sheng still loved her. Most women knew that a man liked them. But Li Yufei ignored Qi Sheng's love. Li Yufei and Qi Sheng were childhood sweethearts. Their families were family friends, and they were both merchants. Qi Sheng liked Li Yufei, but Li Yufei had higher ambitions in her heart. Naturally, she didn't like Qi Sheng. This time, she came to Qi Sheng because there was a problem with her family's business, and she needed his help. However, she couldn't resist Qi Sheng's male lead halo. In addition, there was the beautiful Mu Yanluo who liked Qi Sheng. It was good to have someone to fight for things. Besides, Li Yufei and Qi Sheng had sex. Naturally, she fell in love with Qi Sheng. She fell in love with Qi Sheng with the intention of using him. Ning Shu first went to the kitchen and asked someone to cook. Then, he went to the room and saw Yuelon embroidering something. He took an apple and gnawed on it. Looking at Yuelon's embroidery, he said, You're embroidering bamboo. This is for a man. Yuelon, do you have a man? Yulan's face instantly turned red. She muttered, Miss, what are you talking about? This servant doesn't have a man. Don't slander this servant's innocence. Ning Shu took a bite of the apple and said with a smile, It's time to give something. Why isn't there a man? Tell me, who is it? Is it someone from the Qi mansion? Ning Shu looked at Yulan with wide eyes. Yulan immediately said, It's not what Miss thinks. It's who? Qi Sheng? Ning Shu stared at Yulan dumbfounded. Although Qi Sheng was good-looking and rich, he was a scumbag who wanted to have a foot in two boats. He was absolutely not worthy of his little sister Yulan. Yulan looked at Ning Shu in a daze and asked, What does this have to do with Qi Sheng? Who is Qi Sheng? After all this time, Yulan still didn't know the name of the owner of this house. Ning Shu asked, Then who are you giving this to? Yulan's face was very red. She said shyly, Miss, don't ask. Your lipstick is smudged. You should go touch up your makeup. Don't try to divert your miss's attention. Tell me it's that man. I want to see if that man can be entrusted with my life. Ning Shu said seriously. In fact, Ning Shu still liked little sister Yulan. Although she was a bit thick-skinned, she was a good girl. It was good to be able to settle this girl's marriage before leaving. Yulan said, Miss, this servant really doesn't have a man. This servant is planning to make a pair of shoes for the shadow guard. Last time, this servant saw that the shadow guard's shoes were broken. The shadow guard has worked so hard to protect us, so we have to repay him. Ning Shu's face was suddenly enlightened. He nodded and said, So that's how it is. Thinking of the shadow guard's square face, and then looking at Yuelan's delicate and pretty appearance, would there be any sparks between the two of them? Ning Shu originally wanted to ask Yuelan about her feelings for the shadow guard, but then he thought about it. How could he say anything about feelings? Ning Shu applied lipstick in front of the mirror, and then went to serve Qi Sheng and Li Yufei. When they arrived at the living room, Qi Sheng and Li Yufei were already eating. Ning Shu hurriedly said, Young master, why didn't you call this servant to serve you the meal? Miss Yufei, this servant will serve you the dishes. Li Yufei's face was a little ugly, but she endured it. Ning Shu smiled reluctantly and said, Xiao Hong, there's no need. I can do it myself. You can serve your young master. Ning Shu immediately said to Qi Sheng. Then young master, this servant will serve you. Qi Sheng frowned and covered his nose with his hand. Ning Shu said gently, there's no need. You can also go and eat. Yufei and I don't need you to serve us. Ning Shu naturally knew that these two people despised her. Disgusting to death. People usually couldn't smell their own bodies. So Ning Shu didn't think that she smelled that bad. However, seeing these two people trying their best to hold it in, but not wanting to say it out loud, it was really refreshing. Qi Sheng and Li Yufei were the same kind of people. They were more hypocritical. They looked one way on the surface, but their hearts were different. Now one was beautiful and gentle, and the other was gentle and amiable. They disliked her so much in their hearts. How can this be? This servant is the young master's personal maid. Naturally, I have to serve the young master. Ning Shu picked up the chopsticks and picked up a piece of chicken. However, he didn't hold it firmly. The chicken fell into the chicken soup. The soup splashed and splashed on Li Yufei. Li Yufei jumped up from the chair with a cry. Then, she realized that her actions were not gentle. She bit her lips tightly, looking a little wronged. She looked at Qi Sheng with a pair of watery eyes. Qi Sheng also frowned. Ning Shu's face showed panic and apology. He quickly took out a handkerchief with the scent of flowers mixed with the smell of feet, and wiped the oil stains on Li Yufei's body. Li Yufei was about to vomit because of this strange smell. She pushed Ning Shu away and said to Qi Sheng with grievance, Brother Sheng, do you not welcome Yufei? Is that why you let your personal maid do this? If Brother Sheng wants Yufei to leave, Yufei will leave immediately. Hurry up and leave. Look at what you've done. Qi Sheng shouted at Ning Shu. Ning Shu curled her lips and said, this servant didn't mean it. Get out. Qi Sheng pretended to be angry, but he secretly winked at Ning Shu. Ning Shu saw that Qi Sheng's eyes were constantly cramping and hurriedly asked with concern, Young master, what's wrong with your eyes? They keep cramping. Poor young master, please don't go blind. Qi Sheng was speechless. Li Yufei also asked with concern, Brother Sheng, are you okay? Qi Sheng felt so sad. He had never seen anyone as stupid as Xiao Hong. Chapter 146. Qi Sheng told Ning Shu sternly, you can leave now. You don't need to serve here. Ning Shu was still hesitant. Qi Sheng said coldly, leave. If you don't listen to the young master, do you want to be sold? Ning Shu turned around and left without saying a word. Qi Sheng then said to Li Yufei, Yufei, don't think too much. This girl is clumsy and always causes problems. How can I bear to drive you away? You know how I feel about her. Li Yufei smiled and asked, why is this maid so clumsy? Brother Sheng, why do you keep this girl by your side? Also, this maid has a strange smell on her. Can Brother Sheng bear it? Qi Sheng was speechless. He kept this girl by his side because she might be the most beautiful woman in the world, Mu Yanluo. Qi Sheng naturally would not give up on such a good thing, even if he had Li Yufei in his heart. As a man, it was okay to have a taste of something new. Brother Sheng, why don't you answer Yufei? Li Yufei asked with a frown. Qi Sheng held Li Yufei's hand tightly and said affectionately, Yufei, can't you see? Why do you ask me such a question? I've always only had you in my heart. In this life, I want you to be my wife. Li Yufei immediately lowered her head shyly and did not speak. Qi Sheng's heart swayed. He lowered his head and kissed Li Yufei. Then they began to talk. On the way, Ning Shu found that he had lost his handkerchief, so he went back to look for it. This handkerchief had the most authentic smell. It would be a pity to lose it. Ning Shu had just walked into the courtyard when he heard the movements in the room. Ning Shu was stunned. Weren't they eating just now? How could they be in bed now? Besides, Li Yufei had just arrived at the Qi mansion today. How could she be so unreserved and roll around with the male lead? Sure enough, there was no logic in this world. In Li Yufei's opinion, as long as she caught Qi Sheng, her family would be able to survive the crisis. But in the end, she fell in love with Qi Sheng. This was the plot. She was destined to catch the adulterers. Ning Shu touched his chin. How was she going to catch the adulterers? Ning Shu quietly walked in and walked to the side of the bed. The two people on the bed were fighting and did not notice that there was someone standing next to them. Ning Shu looked at the two white-cut chicken in all kinds of positions, and his face revealed an intoxicated expression. He was very engrossed. Ning Shu suddenly said, "Young master, do you need this servant to prepare the bath water for you?" "Ah!" Li Yufei quickly wrapped her arms around her chest and let out an earth-shattering scream. She immediately pushed Qi Sheng away. Qi Sheng's doppelganger was immediately exposed. It was like a pillar supporting the sky. Then it was released. Li Yufei's face was covered in it. Then Li Yufei screamed again. After being scared by Ning Shu and Li Yufei, Qi Sheng, who had just been released, immediately went limp. He felt like he couldn't stand up anymore. TSK, TSK, TSK. What a dirty scene. You guys need to remove it. Qi Sheng's face was ashen. Ning Shu shouted, "Get out. Who let you in? Get out." After Li Yufei screamed, she calmed down. She loosened her hands from her chest and released her turbulent breasts. She trembled as if she was deliberately showing off to Ning Shu. Ning Shu straightened his chest. "You're big. I'm bigger than you. I'm fuller than you. You're drooping." The two people on the bed had no intention of wearing clothes. They simply had no sense of shame. How could you guys be so licentious? Qi Sheng roared at Ning Shu. "This young master told you to get out. You don't want to leave. Do you want to stay together?" Ning Shu almost vomited in disgust. Looking at Qi Sheng swaggering around to dry his little bird, he was shameless. Li Yufei and Qi Sheng's bodies were pressed together. Ning Shu felt like his eyes were going blind. "This servant will go prepare the bath water for young master. By the way, young master, you were frightened by Miss Yufei's scream. Do you need medicine?" Ning Shu asked very considerately. Ding abuse level 15. Current abuse level 20. 2333 hurriedly said. "Ning Shu, you can't look. If you look at this thing too much, you'll get a needle eye. You're not pure anymore. Get out." Qi Sheng was so angry that Ning Shu roared. Ning Shu hurriedly said, "This servant will get out now. Young master, have fun. By the way, if you need medicine, this servant will prepare it for you. This servant will really get out. This servant will get out now." Ning Shu saw that Qi Sheng's face was very scary. There was no trace of his usual gentle appearance. He guessed that he had really pissed him off. After leaving the door, Ning Shu didn't leave. Instead, he hid by the window and listened to what was going on inside. "Ning Shu, why are you doing this? You've changed. You weren't like this before. You used to be very pure." 2333 said. Ning Shu directly said, "Do you know me? If you don't, then don't talk nonsense. Previously, the system recorded that you were very pure. Why have you changed now? You only peeped at other people's sex once in a few missions. Now you're actually peeping at other people's sex." 2333 seemed to be wiping tears. "I've changed. What does it have to do with you? If you have the ability, then don't bring me to this crazy world." Ning Shu's forehead was full of black lines. "Now you're blaming me for being impure? What does it have to do with you?" 2333 was sad. "How can you be so fierce to me? Although I'm the mainframe, I have emotions too. We'll be partners in the future. Maybe we'll be tied together forever. You should be nicer to me. Then can I change to another system? I don't want you." Ning Shu said bluntly. I'll never talk to you again." 2333 went into hiding. Ning Shu and 2333 were arguing. Inside, Qi Sheng and Li Yufei were also talking. "What's wrong, brother Sheng? Why can't you get up? Try it." Qi Sheng's voice was a little anxious. Ning Shu looked through the window and saw Qi Sheng kneeling on the bed. Li Yufei was trying her best to tease him, but little Qi Sheng was soft. "Brother Sheng, this isn't very good. Yufei has never tried it before," Li Yufei said very shyly. However, Qi Sheng's expression was very bad. He directly pressed Li Yufei's head down and pressed her under him. Then the scene was very dirty. Ning Shu rubbed his eyes and continued to watch. But unfortunately, after Li Yufei's efforts, little Qi Sheng still didn't get up. Ning Shu thought silently. Could it be that he was so scared that he became impotent? Amitabha, how many women would not fall into his evil hands? His little brother didn't feel anything, which made Qi Sheng angry and scared. He pushed Li Yufei in front of him away. Li Yufei was stunned and called out sadly, "Brother Sheng." Ning Shu saw that Qi Sheng's face was ashen. but he still wanted to comfort Li Yufei. Ning Shu felt very happy in his heart. "Yufei, I'm tired today," Qi Sheng said and kissed Li Yufei's head perfunctorily. Then he began to put on his clothes. Chapter 147. It seemed that the situation in the room would not continue. Little brother Qi Sheng was dying. Ning Shu saw that there was nothing else, so she quickly ran back to her room. She took out the whistle on her chest and blew it. Seeing Ning Shu blow the whistle, Yulan hurriedly put down her subordinate's shoe and asked, "Miss, did something happen?" Asked the shadow guard to come out. Of course something happened. Now that Qi Sheng was dying, he would definitely come back to find her. Although Li Yufei was also involved, the main reason was still her. Now that she was courting death, Ning Shu came to the shadow guard for protection. "I'm the silly and sweet female lead. I need protection." After blowing the whistle for a while, the shadow guard jumped in from the window. She was dressed in black and had a mask on her face. "Miss, what's the matter?" the shadow guard asked. Ning Shu said, "I just want to see if you're around. My life is in danger recently. You must appear when I blow the whistle." The shadow guard looked at Ning Shu, paused and asked, "Miss, what did you do?" Ning Shu said very innocently, "I didn't do anything. There are always unruly people who want to harm your Mississippi. You have to be careful recently. Maybe someone wants to deal with your Mississippi. You must protect your Mississippi," Ning Shu's shadow guard said. The shadow guard's eyes were filled with disdain as she said, "I know. By the way, Yuelan made a pair of shoes for you," Ning Shu's shadow guard said. The shadow guard immediately looked at Yuelan. Yuelan's face immediately turned red. She stomped her feet and said to Ning Shu, "Miss, how can you say it so quickly? Why can't I say it?" Ning Shu looked at Yuelan. The shadow guard thanked Yuelan and jumped out of the window. Ning Shu said, "If I say it, you won't be able to give the shadow guard a surprise." Yuelan looked at Ning Shu and pursed her lips. She was about to cry. "You're making this servant embarrassed," Ning Shu said. "Oh, you won't be embarrassed if you secretly give the shoes to the shadow guard." Ning Shu admitted that he did it on purpose. "Miss, why are you like this? You've changed. You weren't like this before." Yulan looked sadly at Ning Shu. "Damn it. Today, all of them told her that you've changed. It's fine. If you really can't make 2 pairs, you'll be pleasantly surprised. Originally, Big Brother Shadow Guard thought that you would only receive 1 pair of shoes. But in the end, you received 2 pairs. Aren't you pleasantly surprised?" Ning Shu comforted Yuelan. Yuelan looked at Ning Shu with tears in her eyes. "Miss, how can you be like this? There's clearly nothing. But after hearing what you said, I feel like there's something. There's clearly nothing. So how can this servant take a fancy to the shadow guard's wooden face?" Ning Shu quickly covered Yuelan's mouth and said to her, "Although what you said is the truth, you can't say it so casually. If this is heard by Big Brother Shadow Guard, what if Big Brother Shadow Guard leaves heartbroken?" Yulan shook her head. Ning Shu released Yulan's mouth. Yulan said, "This servant thinks that Hidden Guard Gidge is a good person." After being given the good person card, there was usually no play. Sure enough, as Ning Shu expected, Qi Sheng came to find her at night. Ning Shu felt very speechless. What couldn't be said during the day? Why did he have to wait until night time? She could tell that this guy had bad intentions. When Ning Shu opened the door, Qi Sheng was holding a folding fan in his hand. He leaned against the door in a very handsome and lazy manner. When he saw Ning Shu, he said, "Little Red, take a walk with young master. Young master has something to say to you." Ning Shu blinked her panda eyes and asked, "What's the matter? Young master, it's so late. What do you have to say to this servant?" "This servant wants to sleep now." Qi Sheng frowned and looked at Ning Shu's face. He asked, "Don't you wash your face at night? Why do you sleep with makeup on at night? This lead powder is very bad for the skin. Go wash your face and take a walk with young master." Ning Shu touched her face shyly and said, "This servant likes this makeup. Even if I sleep, I don't want to wash my face." Qi Sheng's eyes flashed with anger, but he quickly suppressed it. Ning Shu said gently, "It's okay. Take a walk with young master." Ning Shu followed behind Qi Sheng. Qi Sheng walked very slowly in front of him. His posture was very elegant and lazy. Under the bright moonlight, he was like a person in a painting. Qixing did not speak, and neither did Ningxu. When they reached the pavilion, Qixing sat on the stone bench and did not speak. To be honest, when Ningxu saw Qixing's current appearance, the image of Qixing taking off his clothes and cutting a chicken appeared in his mind. The koi fish swam in the pool under the pavilion, making a little noise from time to time. It was like a ghost, making Ningxu's hair stand on end. He felt that the surroundings were a little gloomy. Young master, the moon tonight is really big and round. Ningxu broke the silence. Qixing looked at Ningxu. Under the cold moonlight, her face was very pale. Her eyes were dark, and her lips were red. She looked like a ghost. Qixing looked away and said, I want to talk about what happened at noon. What happened at noon? Ningxu touched the whistle on his chest. In case Qixing was really scared to the point of impotence. Did he come to take revenge on her? Ningxu took 2 steps back and asked, Young master, what do you want to talk about? Qixing said to Ningxu, sit down. I want to talk to you about Yufei. Ningxu, get lost. What is there to talk about? Yufei is the girl I have loved since childhood. We will definitely be married in the future. Qixing looked at Ningxu with a forced and affectionate gaze. I hope you can understand. Of course this servant can understand. Congratulations, young master. Ningxu said very straightforwardly. Qixing's face suddenly showed joy. He stood up and wanted to grab Ningxu's hand, but then he withdrew his hand and said, Young master knows you are a kind-hearted person. When Yufei and I are married, I will let Yufei accept you. Yufei is a kind-hearted person like you. Qixing said happily. What the fuck? Ningxu really wanted to slap him. After all this time, this guy wanted to have his cake and eat it too. He wanted to marry his true love and take her as a concubine. Damn. He thought this guy couldn't take it anymore and came to him for an explanation. He came in the middle of the night to have a heart-to-heart talk and flirt. The male lead's ability was really not for show. This was fine. He should get rid of the root of the problem. Nothing would happen. Ningxu couldn't understand. She had already ruined herself like this. She was so unbearable to look at. But Qixing could still hypnotize himself and think that she was a great beauty. Ningxu showed a shy smile. Young master and Miss Yufei are a match made in heaven. Young master said that Miss Yufei is the best woman in the world. Young master should take good care of Miss Yufei. Why does young master want Miss Yufei to accept this servant? This servant has the appearance of a willow. I really don't want to get involved in the great love between young master and Miss Yufei. Chapter 148. Ningxu almost wanted to kneel down in front of Qixing's logic. He did it with another woman at noon, then came to find her at night, and let her share a husband with his true love. It was simply ridiculous. Ningxu really wanted to ask Qixing if he really loved his true love. It was simply wanton and unrestrained. Did it mean that he could hide his love in his heart and do whatever he wanted with his body, as long as he loved her in his heart? What a scumbag! Ningxu twitched the corner of his mouth and looked at Qixing, who looked very elegant under the moonlight, and said, Young master, do you love Miss Yufei? Qixing nodded and said, Yes, I have loved her for many years. Ningxu was speechless. Since he loved her so much, why did he talk to another woman in the middle of the night behind Li Yufei's back? Was his love so overflowing? Or did Qixing just want to cheat her? No matter what, Ningxu despised Qixing. I believe that Yufei will accept you. You will love each other. You are both kind women. Qixing's expression was a little painful. Recently, I found that I have fallen in love with you. I can't give up either of you or Yufei. Damn it. Ningxu was disgusted to death. Damn it. There was no normal male protagonist in this world. One had a tragic childhood and a dark heart. One was a chauvinist and straight man. And one was a womanizer who cheated and cheated. Damn it, he didn't know what kind of man the latter was. If he was sick, he should go to see a doctor. Why torture Mu Yanluo? If either of you leaves me, I will be in so much pain that I want to die. Qixing looked at Ningxu affectionately. Ningxu swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He really wanted to spit on this bastard's face. Yanluo, I will die without you. Qixing hardened his heart and grabbed Ningxu's hand. His expression suddenly changed. but he still firmly grabbed Ning Shu's hand. Then go to hell. Ning Shu withdrew her hand and shyly lowered her head. This servant is very ugly, and is not worthy of young master. No, I know you're doing this to protect yourself. I once went to the capital to see you. I only saw you from afar and knew that you were a peerless beauty. Your eyes were as clear as water, and your hair was as green as clouds. I can understand why you're doing this. Ning Shu was speechless. No wonder this guy tolerated her so much. It turned out that he knew what Mu Yanluo looked like. Ning Shu blinked his dark and misty eyes, completely different from what Qi Sheng had described. Ning Shu shook his head and said, Young master, my name is Xiao Hong, not Mu Yanluo. Young master, have you lost your mind? Take your medicine. Qi Sheng said rather dotingly, Okay. You are Xiao Hong, not Mu Yanluo. When people ask you in the future, you have to say this. After all, Mu Yanluo is very famous. You will be in danger. Every word was filled with falsehood and coquettishness. Ning Shu dared to kneel down and swear to the heavens that Qi Sheng, this bastard, wanted to possess this body. What happened next was that as they did it, he fell in love with her, and was tortured by the supporting female lead Li Yufei. After that, Qi Sheng suddenly realized that the person he loved was Mu Yanluo, and not that vicious woman Li Yufei. He really loved her in the past. It turned out that she was so vicious. Her gentleness and kindness in the past were all fake blah blah blah. Qi Sheng approached Ning Shu, and wanted to kiss Ning Shu's forehead gently, but as soon as he got close, he smelled a greasy and disgusting scalp smell. Qi Sheng changed his position, and wanted to kiss his cheek, but the thick rouge and powder on his face made him unable to do so. In the end he could only give up. Ning Shu sneered in his heart. He knew that Qi Sheng couldn't do it. He didn't even bother to hide. Qi Sheng's target was the peerless beauty Mu Yanluo, not the stinky and ugly Xiao Hong. Ning Shu looked at Qi Sheng and asked, Young master, does Miss Yufei know that you came to see me? Qi Sheng shook his head and said, Yufei doesn't know, but I don't think she will mind. You think too much. Ning Shu's mouth twitched. He shivered and said, Oh, it's quite cold at night. I'm going back to sleep. As soon as Ning Shu turned around, Qi Sheng grabbed his hand. Ning Shu turned his head, and looked at Qi Sheng with his thick eyebrows raised. Under the moonlight, Qi Sheng was a little scared by Ning Shu's face. He showed a gentle smile and said, Cover yourself well at night. Don't catch a cold. Big brother, what are you talking about? It's summer now. You should say don't get bitten by mosquitoes. That's too perfunctory. Ning Shu nodded and said with a serious face, I know. Young master, you must also cover yourself with a quilt. Ning Shu waved his sleeves and left without the slightest reluctance. Then under Qi Sheng's gaze, he ran away like a wisp of smoke. Back in the room, Yuelan immediately checked Ning Shu from head to toe and asked, Miss, are you okay? I'm fine. How can something happen to your miss? Ning Shu waved her hand. Yuelan was a little worried. She looked at Ning Shu and said, Miss, let's leave here. I feel that young master has bad intentions towards you. It was the same in the Prime Minister's residence. It's still the same in a different place. Why are these men so annoying? Your miss has a constitution of accidents. She's like this wherever she goes. Mu Yanluo would attract men's attention wherever she went. Yulan sighed, and then began to cry. She stammered. Previously, Mrs. Beauty was well known throughout the world. Who in the world didn't say that Miss had a good life? But now it has become like this. This servant is pitiful Mississippi. Oh my God. The tears came out without even brewing. This girl was the real movie queen. The female lead wasn't beautiful, so how could she make those men obsessed? In the end, they gave up everything and lived in seclusion with the female lead. If she wasn't beautiful, how could they get her? Ning Shu raised her hand and said, Don't cry. Although your miss is ugly now, she still has breasts. Yuelan was speechless. Qi Sheng thought that he had made it clear to Ning Shu that night. It seemed that Ning Shu had also agreed to his proposal. So the next day, he looked at Ning Shu with ambiguous and teasing eyes. Li Yufei saw Qi Sheng's eyes, and suddenly felt a sense of crisis in her heart. She and Qi Sheng had already done the deed of husband and wife. Qi Sheng was especially charming in bed. Li Yufei's heart was moved. Li Yufei was still using Qi Sheng's feelings to save her family's business. But now, Li Yufei really fell in love with Qi Sheng. Not only did the female lead have the ability to make the male lead fall in love with the female lead after having sex, but the male lead also had this ability. Moreover, it was very lethal to the female supporting characters and female cannon fodder. Usually, these female supporting characters and female cannon fodder would be jealous of the male lead's infatuation with the female lead. Then they would do something vicious to hurt the female lead. Therefore, when Ning Shu felt two pairs of eyes staring at her, she suddenly had the urge to pour the hot soup on these two people. Chapter 149. Ning Shu was speechless. Now that she had ruined herself to this extent, she still attracted Li Yufei's hatred. Now, Li Yufei's gaze was especially sharp and vigilant. It was as if she was examining her, as if she wanted to see through her. Ning Shu put the hot soup on the table and smiled like an idiot. She said to Qi Sheng and Li Yufei, "Young master, Miss Yufei, the soup is here." Qi Sheng said, "There's no need to serve here. You can leave." Li Yufei also said gently, "Xiao Hong, you can leave. Come to my room later. Your makeup is really not exquisite enough. I'll teach you other techniques later." Ning Shu was speechless. Haha, Li Yufei probably wanted to know her true appearance. Qi Sheng's eyes lit up and he said, "You should get closer and let Yufei teach you makeup." Ning Shu didn't pay attention to the two of them at all. Since she didn't want anyone to serve her, she immediately left. Ning Shu returned to the room and saw Yuelon eating. Ning Shu suddenly thought of something. "What did brother secret guard eat?" Ning Shu asked Yuelon. "Has your hidden guard brother eaten yet?" Yuelon put down her chopsticks and pouted. Ning Shu said, "He's not my brother. The secret guard has already eaten. This servant makes an extra portion every time I eat. By the time Miss remembers, the secret guard has already starved to death." "Oh, it's Mrs.'s fault. Fortunately, Yuelon, this little cutie, thinks about the secret guard. Otherwise, the secret guard would really starve to death." Ning Shu patted Yuelon's shoulder and said, "In the future, when Miss is not here, you and your brother's secret guard can support each other." Yuelon quickly said, "How can Miss not be here? This servant must be by Mrs.'s side. This servant is Mrs.'s person in life, and will be Mrs.'s ghost in death." Okay. Ning Shu waved his hand. "Your Miss knows your intentions." Yuelon's eyes were watery again. "Miss, no matter where you go, you must take this servant with you." He felt that this girl's tears were like tap water. As soon as the tap was turned on, tears would flow out. "I'll definitely bring you along. Don't worry," Ning Shu said. "You're little red. My young miss wants to see you." A maid walked in and saw Ning Shu's face. Her eyes flashed with disdain. "Hurry up, my miss wants to see you. Hurry up, and young master Qi Sheng is also waiting. You'd better hurry up, and not let the masters wait for too long." It seemed that Li Yufei wanted her to wash her face clean. "Hurry up, what are you dawdling for?" The young maidservant snapped at Ning Shu. Ning Shu pursed her lips and followed the maidservant to Li Yufei's courtyard. She walked into the room and saw that the previous colorful dress had been removed. Now all the decorations were expensive and elegant. It was completely different from the vulgar style she used to wear. Qi Sheng was sitting in the hall. When he saw Ning Shu, he quickly said to Ning Shu, "You really should change your image." Li Yufei also said, "Go take a shower first." Li Yufei wanted to wash away the strange smell on her body, but with Qi Sheng next to her, she naturally couldn't say that. Ning Shu didn't want to expose her face at all. She didn't want to be disfigured by Li Yufei. It was very painful to be cut by a knife on the face. A woman's jealousy was really terrible. "The hot water is ready. Go take a shower. After that, I'll teach you how to put on makeup." Li Yufei saw that Ning Shu didn't move and said another sentence. Ning Shu sat on the ground with a plop, startling Qi Sheng and Li Yufei. Li Yufei quickly said, "Little Red, what are you doing? Get up quickly. The ground is cold." Qi Sheng said, "If you have anything to say, we can all make decisions for you." Ning Shu cried and said, "Miss Yufei, please don't let me remove my makeup. Otherwise I really can't see anyone." "Why is that?" Li Yufei asked in surprise. "I'm actually very ugly. The right side of my face has a black birthmark. That's why I put a thick layer of powder on my face to cover it. As Ning Shu spoke, she wiped off the powder on her face with her sleeve, and then revealed the dark skin under the foundation. It was really dark and looked very disgusting. Qi Sheng was stunned for a moment and asked, "Why do you have a birthmark? Your birthmark is fake, right? It's fake, isn't it?" When Ning Shu saw Qi Sheng's disillusioned and nauseous look, she spat in her heart. Qi Sheng slammed the folding fan on the table, and then clenched it tightly in his hand. Blue veins appeared on the back of his hand, and his face was ferocious for a moment. He turned to Li Yufei and said, "I have something to do. I'll leave first. You guys go ahead." Then he left without looking back. Li Yufei looked at Ning Shu's dark half-face, and smiled more gently. She said, "Since you're like this, I won't force you. You can go." Then Ning Shu turned and left. On the way back he met a livid Qi Sheng. Qi Sheng frowned and looked at Ning Shu and asked, "Are you really not Mu Yanluo?" Ning Shu blinked her panda eyes and said, "Young master, when did I say that I'm Mu Yanluo? I've always emphasized that I'm Xiao Hong, which means small and red. I'm not Mu Yanluo." "Young master, you've always said that I'm Mu Yanluo. I've always denied it." Ning Shu stepped on Qi Sheng's sore spot. Abuse points 10. Current abuse points 20. 2333's voice was a little violent. "Why are there so few abuse points, Ning Shu? How the hell would I know? It would be strange if someone with a fox's mind didn't get abused so easily." "Then what's the matter with the maid beside you? She's a wanted person." Qi Sheng was still making his final struggle. Ning Shu looked at Qi Sheng with his dark half-face and said in a suppressed voice, "That maid is a wanted criminal? I'm not very clear about this." "Actually," Ning Shu lowered his head shyly and said, "I met this maid halfway. At that time, she was lying in the middle of the road. My father and I saved her. Later my father passed away. I told her to call me Mississippi. My father isn't a high-ranking official. It was all for vanity's sake. Young master. Enough, don't say any more." Qi Sheng covered his face with his hands and rubbed them twice. "Why did you lie to me? Why did you lie to me?" When Ning Shu heard this, she almost spat at Qi Sheng's face. Ning Shu widened her misty eyes and asked in shock, "When has this servant ever lied to you?" "This servant has never lied to you." Qi Sheng's face twitched and he roared loudly, "Xiao Hong is a fake name. I thought you were Mu Yanluo. What's wrong with Xiao Hong? I have an older brother called Xiao Ming. I'm called Xiao Hong." Ning Shu nodded firmly. Qi Sheng covered his heart and said, "Get lost. I don't want to see you now. How dare you lie to me?" Ning Shu turned and ran away. Chapter 150. Ever since Qi Sheng found out that Ning Shu wasn't Mu Yanluo, her attitude towards Ning Shu had changed drastically. The tea she brewed was either too hot or too cold. She covered her nose and bluntly said that Ning Shu smelled very bad. She almost bluntly said, "You're so ugly, why don't you die?" However, she didn't directly drive Ning Shu away. She still let Ning Shu be her personal maidservant. She guessed that there was still some connection between the male and female leads. Ning Shu still had dark circles under her eyes and bright red lips every day, swaying in front of Qi Sheng. Qi Sheng's attitude towards her was very bad. But strangely, Li Yufei's attitude towards her was unprecedentedly good. It was so good that Ning Shu's hair stood on end. She didn't understand what was wrong with Li Yufei. Did she want to be good friends with her? Was it because she was ugly now that she could set off Li Yufei's peerless beauty? "Come Xiaohong, this pouch is for you. There are some pieces of silver in it. Go and buy some rouge and face powder." Li Yufei handed a pouch to Ning Shu. In the face of the female lead's charity, as a dignified female lead, she should righteously refuse and defend her dignity. Ning Shu quickly took the pouch and said with a smile, "Thank you, Miss Yufei." Ning Shu opened the pouch in front of Li Yufei. There were many pieces of silver in it. She opened her mouth wide and smiled brightly at Li Yufei. With a sneaky face she said to Li Yufei, "Miss Yufei, is there anything I can do for you?" By medicine, by sex toys, Ning Shu felt that he could do it for her. Li Yufei took 2 steps back and covered her nose with a handkerchief. She said, "No, it's just that I see that your rouge and face powder are cheap. You can use this money to buy some good ones. Xiao Hong, your brother Sheng's personal maidservant. Your appearance also represents brother Sheng's face. Even if you don't pay attention to your image, you still have to think about brother Sheng's face. Facing such humiliation from the supporting female lead, the female lead should be righteous and unyielding. You can insult my character, but you can't insult my dignity. Miss Yufei, although I, Xiao Hong, am ugly, I still have my dignity. Ning Shu puffed up his chest and rubbed it against Li Yufei's chest. Although I'm ugly, my chest is bigger than yours. Li Yufei. Qi Xing came back from outside and saw Ning Shu and Li Yufei together. First, Ning Shu snorted coldly, and then he said to Li Yufei gently, "How are you at home?" Li Yufei's smile was exceptionally gentle. Her entire body seemed to be covered with a layer of holy and gentle light. "Brother Sheng, Yufei has prepared the meal. Let's go eat," Li Yufei said shyly to Qi Sheng. Qi Sheng glanced at Ning Shu, took Li Yufei's hand and said, "I know Yufei knows my taste the best. The food you make must be to my taste." Li Yufei's smile became even more bashful. Ning Shu couldn't figure out what was there to be shy about. Qi Sheng turned around and coldly said to Ning Shu, "What are you waiting for? Come and serve Yufei and me. You're now a personal maid." Ning Shu pursed his bloody mouth. Li Yufei hurriedly persuaded Qi Sheng, "She's your personal maid. If there's anything she doesn't do well, just teach her more in the future." Qi Sheng looked coldly at Ning Shu, and then said to Li Yufei, "You're the kindest person. Some people just don't change. If it weren't for the 20 taels of silver, I would have kicked her out long ago." Ning Shu. That she felt that Qi Sheng was really awkward now. This bastard probably felt that she had cheated on his feelings. Nonsense. Qi Sheng clearly wanted to cheat on her feelings, but now he was playing the blame game. He was simply shameless. Qi Sheng and Li Yufei entered the room hand in hand. Ning Shu followed behind them and served them food. Qi Sheng clearly couldn't stand the stench on her body, but he still insisted on letting her serve him by his side. He was really sick. "Brother Sheng, drink this soup. Yufei specially prepared it for you. It's very hard to be busy with business every day." Li Yufei scooped up the soup with a spoon. Qi Sheng revealed a gentle smile on his face. He directly grabbed Li Yufei's hand, brought the spoon in Li Yufei's hand to him, and drank it with a look of enjoyment. Looking at Qi Sheng's rippling appearance, Ning Shu thought that he was drinking an aphrodisiac. "Yufei, you drink too." Qi Sheng scooped a spoonful of soup and brought it to Li Yufei. Li Yufei drank it sweetly. After Qi Sheng and Li Yufei finished their meal, Ning Shu stood at the side and stared blankly at the pink bubbles rising from their bodies. She felt her teeth ache unbearably. It was too pretentious. Qi Sheng and Li Yufei were the same kind of people. They used a harmless and gentle mask to hide their hearts. Li Yufei's heart was not as gentle and kind as her appearance. Qi Sheng's heart was also not as tolerant and gentle as he showed. These two people were really a match made in heaven. Haha. Get out. Qi Sheng glanced at Ning Shu from the corner of his eyes. Ning Shu was about to doze off, but when he heard Qi Sheng's words, he immediately turned around and left. Qi Sheng gritted his teeth and said, "Close the door and wait outside. You're not allowed to leave. Just wait outside." Ning Shu was stunned when he heard that he had to close the door. Why would he close the door in broad daylight? He was taking a nap at noon. Ning Shu saw Li Yufei's blushing face, and suddenly became a Spartan. What a beast. He was going to do it in broad daylight. The worst thing was that Qi Sheng actually asked her to wait outside the door. Could his taste be more unique? Did he think that he was the emperor's favorite concubine? Why would he want someone to wait outside? Ning Shu looked at Qi Sheng with an expression that said, "You're so dirty." Qi Sheng automatically interpreted Ning Shu's expression as envy and jealousy. He said faintly and very pretentiously, "What are you waiting for? Get out and close the door." Ning Shu turned around and went out, then closed the door. He leaned against the door and kept rolling his eyes. After a while, there were ambiguous sounds in the room. There were all kinds of flirtatious sounds that made people blush. There was also the squeaking sound of the bed shaking, and Li Yufei's lingering and ambiguous moans. "TSK, TSK, TSK. Ning Shu shook his head. Making love with other women in front of the female lead was simply a weapon to torture the female lead. If the original Mu Yanlua was here, she would probably be heartbroken. Ning Shu sat on the steps and dozed off with his head propped up on his hand, treating these sounds as a lullaby. Alas, this world has no moral integrity. Ning Shu was dozing off when he heard a roar. Xiao Hong. Ning Shu suddenly woke up and quickly stood up. He rubbed his eyes and looked at the livid Qi Sheng. He asked, "You're done so soon?" Suddenly, Qi Sheng's face became even more unsightly. He held the folding fan tightly in his hand and wished that he could beat Ning Shu to death with the folding fan. Ning Shu saw Qi Sheng's livid face and instantly knew that he had said something wrong. He closed his mouth and didn't speak, but his eyes looked at the place 3 inches below Qi Sheng's navel. Could it be that he was really scared? Chapter 151. Ning Shu's suspicious eyes made Qi Sheng's face tremble. Such a suspicious and wretched look made Qi Sheng once again confirm that this wretched woman was not Mu Yanluo at all. Mu Yanluo was peerless, noble, and beautiful. How could she be like this? Get away from me. I don't want to see you now. Qi Sheng rubbed the bridge of his nose, feeling uncomfortable. Ning Shu quickly left. Qi Sheng stopped Ning Shu again. Xiao Hong, wait a minute. Ning Shu looked back at Qi Sheng and asked, "Young master, is there anything else?" Qi Sheng walked in front of Ning Shu and asked very seriously, "Xiao Hong, I'll ask you one last time. Are you Mu Yanluo or not? This is the last ultimatum I'm giving you. Tell me, are you Mu Yanluo or not?" Qi Sheng's expression was very serious. Ning Shu waved his hand and asked, "Young master, what's wrong with you? I've said it before. I'm not Mu Yanluo. My name is Xiao Hong. How many times do you want me to say it?" Very good, very good. Do you feel happy to tease me again and again?" Qi Sheng's face was livid. "From now on, you're no longer my personal maid. You'll be a servant of the Qi family." Qi Sheng turned around and left after saying that. After taking 2 steps, he turned back and said to Ning Shu contemptuously, "This is the price you have to pay for deceiving me. Damn, everything was just your imagination. She had never said that she was Mu Yanluo. Now you're blaming me? Can you be reasonable?" After being deprived of her identity as a personal maid, Ning Shu was taken to the washtub by the ruthless nanny steward. Ning Shu said, "From now on, you'll wash the washtub and pour the night incense." Ning Shu, fuck you, Qi Sheng, so cruel. This smell was much more pungent than the smell on her body. The nanny in charge snorted and said, "Don't you know who you are? I knew you were unreliable. It hasn't been long since you annoyed the young master." Ning Shu stretched out his hand. The supervisor mammy asked in a daze, "What are you doing? Give me back the money I gave you back then. At that time, you said that I had a very promising future." Ning Shu lightly said. The nanny in charge's slanted eyes suddenly sharpened. "When did I take your money?" Ning Shu was speechless. Well, this old woman had Alzheimer's and couldn't remember anything. Ning Shu sneered and said, "Just take it as your coffin money. You actually dared to curse me?" The nanny in charge's face turned ugly. "You're just an ugly freak. Do you think the young master will let you go back? You're just a bitch. You're the lowly one. How dare you call our young miss a lowly one? Do you know who our young miss is? You actually let our young miss do such a dirty job." Yuelon stuck out her chest and was very imposing, scaring the nanny in charge. In the end, she was a maid of the prime minister's family and had seen the world. Ning Shu gave Yuelon a thumbs up. Yuelon immediately smiled at Ning Shu, destroying the imposing manner just now. The nanny in charge left with an unfriendly expression. She looked at Ning Shu with a particularly vicious gaze. When the female lead was in trouble, there would always be 1 or 2 vicious cannon fodders to deal with her. Ning Shu would never admit that she had courted death just now. Relying on the fact that she was the female lead, she had no scruples. Anyway, she wouldn't die. As long as she didn't get pushed by these 7 men, she would have completed the task. She would help Mu Yanluo get rid of these men and get rid of the NP ending. To be honest, Ning Shu would rather play with these NPCs. If she stayed with the male lead, she would be in danger of being pushed at any time. For example, she was facing Yi Lai Xiang and Gong Tong now. She didn't have to worry about being pushed by the male lead at all. Yuelon covered her nose and said to Ning Shu, "Young miss, are we really going to do this? It's really smelly." Ning Shu clapped her hands and said indifferently, "Your family's young miss is so noble and elegant. Such a peerless beauty. How could she do this kind of thing? Even washing clothes is more elegant than this. Then let's go. Young Mississippi, didn't you say you wanted to travel around? Let's go now. Young Miss, blow the whistle and let the shadow guards take us away. Yuelon held her breath and tried her best not to breathe. Her face was red from holding it in. Ning Shu looked at the sky at a 45-degree angle, with a sad and beautiful face. Don't even mention how sinful she was. Your family's young miss still has things to do. She will leave soon, Ning Shu said in a rough voice. Yuelon was speechless. This servant doesn't understand what young miss wants to do. Yuelon nodded firmly. Wherever young miss goes, this servant will follow. Ning Shu's tears fell. This smell is too strong. The smell of urea fertilizer was very strong. That's right. Yuelon also wiped her tears. Little Red, our young miss is looking for you. A servant girl shouted at Ning Shu from afar. Ning Shu saw that the servant girl was one of Li Yufei's people. All kinds of conspiracy theories appeared in Ning Shu's mind. For example, Li Yufei saw that she was tired of Qi Sheng and wanted to find all kinds of reasons to torture her, disfigure her. Little Red, come here quickly. The servant girl saw that Ning Shu didn't move and didn't dare to come over. She shouted at Ning Shu in a flustered and exasperated manner. Ning Shu walked over carrying a strong smell. The servant girl almost vomited. She hurriedly said, Young miss is looking for you, and ran away. Ning Shu couldn't figure out why Li Yufei was looking for her. Ning Shu didn't even wash up before heading to Li Yufei's courtyard. Ever since she came to the Qi residence, Ning Shu found that her body was full of all kinds of smells. Now with the addition of the smell of the 5 grains, it was even more disgusting. As soon as Ning Shu walked into the room, Li Yufei immediately covered her nose. Ning Shu shouted, What's that smell? Go wash up first. I have something to tell you. After you wash up, put on some powder. Li Yufei said with a frown. Ning Shu became more and more puzzled. What was this girl trying to do? Could it be that Li Yufei wanted to be good friends with her? That was impossible. The female lead had a halo that would make other women jealous. It would make people inexplicably unhappy with the female lead, and then cause trouble for the female lead. She, the cannon fodder, became the female lead. Did this halo disappear? This didn't make sense. This wasn't fair. She was still the female lead. Ning Shu went back to wash up. Then, according to Li Yufei's request, she put some powder on her body and poured out an entire box. Right now Ning Shu was very fragrant. Very fragrant, so fragrant that it was pungent. Ning Shu entered the room with a strong fragrance, causing Li Yufei to sneeze. She covered her nose and asked, How much powder did you put on? Can't you smell it yourself? This servant can smell it. It's very fragrant. Young Miss Yufei, smell it. Ning Shu walked in front of Li Yufei and raised her arm to Li Yufei's nose. Li Yufei's face darkened as she took a step back. She said with an ugly expression, Little Red, I called you here because I have something to ask you. Chapter 152. Ning Shu was a little surprised. What did Li Yufei want to ask him? Ning Shu approached Li Yufei and asked, Miss Yufei, what do you want to ask me? Li Yufei immediately took a step back, covered her nose and asked, Your brother Sheng's personal maid. Do you know if brother Sheng has someone he likes? Ning Shu blinked her panda eyes and raised her eyebrows that were as thick as caterpillars. She said in surprise, Why do you ask, Miss Yufei? Your young master's true love. No, what I mean is that Miss Yufei is the person young master likes. Ning Shu's words pleased Li Yufei. Li Yufei smiled and glanced at Ning Shu coquettishly. Ning Shu was flirted by her gaze. She wasn't Qi Sheng. Why was she showing such a seductive look to him? Of course I know brother Sheng has me in his heart. Li Yufei's face was flushed. Ning Shu was speechless. She called her over just to say this? Was she trying to attack her? But the smile on Li Yufei's face dissipated a little. She looked at Ning Shu and said, But I feel that there's someone else in brother Sheng's heart. I can feel it very keenly. A woman's intuition was really scary, and it was all true. Ning Shu waved his hand and said, Miss Yufei, you're thinking too much. If you have this feeling, it's nothing more than that. What's that? Li Yufei frowned and looked at Ning Shu. Ning Shu stomped her feet shyly and covered her face as she said, "Oh, Miss Yufei, you know." Li Yufei's face darkened as she said, "If you have something to say, just say it." Ahem. Ning Shu coughed and said, "Miss Yufei, do you feel a little bored in bed and think young master is tired of you? What are you talking about?" Li Yufei's face flushed red, and she was extremely shy. Ning Shu thought, "I didn't see you shy when we were having sex. Your shy look is really annoying. Don't all men like novelty?" Ning Shu grinned at Li Yufei. Li Yufei looked at Ning Shu and asked, "What do you have in mind? If you want to capture a man's heart, you have to make him unable to stop," Ning Shu said in a very experienced manner. Li Yufei looked at Ning Shu and said, "Why can't you stop? I feel like you're quite experienced." "Uft. Ahem, Miss Yufei, you're so annoying." Ning Shu covered his face with a handkerchief. "I'm just SSO. Li Yufei narrowed her eyes. "In that case, you'll be my maid from now on. I'll tell Brother Sheng." How did she become Li Yufei's maidservant? Life was full of ups and downs. He thought he still had to go back and wash the toilet bowl. "Go ahead, tell me your experience," Li Yufei said very grandly. "As long as the matter is done well, there will be many benefits for you." Ning Shu was speechless. He braced himself. Ning Shu smiled very wretchedly. He patted his chest and said loudly, "Miss Yufei, leave this matter to me. I'll definitely do it properly." Li Yufei hummed arrogantly. At night, Qi Xing came to find Li Yufei. When he saw Ning Shu standing by the door, he asked sternly, "Why are you here? Aren't you a servant? Why are you here?" Ning Shu said lightly, "I'm now Miss Yufei's maid." Li Yufei walked over and said gently to Qi Sheng, "Brother Sheng, Yufei found this little girl quite interesting, so I kept her by my side. Brother Sheng won't blame Yufei, right?" Qi Sheng held Li Yufei's hand and said affectionately, "It's just a maidservant. As long as you're happy, it's fine. But this maidservant is very stupid. She doesn't do things properly, and her looks are barely satisfactory. You should pick a better maidservant. Brother Sheng, you're so good to Yufei. Yufei is thinking that Yufei can't leave you in this life." Li Yufei leaned on Qi Sheng's chest. Ning Shu watched from the side. They were so affectionate, as if there was no one else around. Did they consider the feelings of the people around them? The lovey-dovey party should be burned to death. Li Yufei gave Ning Shu a look. Ning Shu tactfully went out, and closed the door considerately. Then he stood at the door. In the room, Li Yufei took off her clothes, revealing her snow-white skin. She wasn't wearing a doo-doo but modern underwear. She was wearing underwear below. Her waist was thin and her legs were slender. It was indescribably tempting. Qi Sheng, who was drinking tea, spat out his tea and stared blankly at Li Yufei. Li Yufei walked to Qi Sheng in an enchanting and charming manner, and sat on Qi Sheng's lap. "Brother Sheng, Yufei specially prepared this. Do you like it?" Qi Sheng felt his nose itch and hurriedly buried his head in Li Yufei's chest. Li Yufei's face revealed a smug expression. This was the first time she had seen Qi Sheng so excited. "Brother Sheng, Yufei also prepared a surprise." Li Yufei became even more charming. Qi Sheng panted and said in a low voice, "What surprise? I'm very surprised now. Good sister, you're so beautiful." Li Yufei was even more certain that Xiao Hong's method was right. Hence, she took out a whip from the box. Under Qi Sheng's baffled expression, Li Yufei coquettishly whipped Qi Sheng. Ning Shu heard Qi Sheng's heart-wrenching wail from outside. Then he roared, "Li Yufei, what are you doing? Why are you whipping me?" Li Yufei said aggrievedly, "Is Brother Sheng unhappy?" Li Yufei's voice became even more aggrieved. Yufei wore this kind of clothes for Brother Sheng, and even used a whip to make it more interesting. "I don't need a whip at all." "Ouch. Stop it. Brother Sheng, don't you love Yufei? Yufei changed like this because she loves you. Brother Sheng, this is very exciting." Li Yufei waved the whip as she spoke. "Yufei, put down the whip first. Of course I know you love me. I love you too. Don't use the whip." "Ouch." Qi Sheng's wails, and the sound of the whip mixed in the room. Ning Shu looked at the two of them, through the crack of the door. As if they were too excited, the two of them started on the ground. They didn't care about the cold ground, and fought with all their might. Qi Sheng's attacks were very fierce, making Li Yufei's cries especially exaggerated. Her cadence could be heard even from outside the courtyard. TSK, TSK, TSK. Can you keep your voice down? The entire Qi mansion probably knows that you two are having sex. You have no integrity and no sense of shame. Ning Shu saw the purplish-red whip marks on Qi Sheng's body through the crack of the door. Ning Shu shook his head regretfully. This kind of whip didn't have a barb. If it had a barb and soaked in salt and chili water, it would feel good to whip Qi Sheng. How good would it be if he could whip Qi Sheng? Sigh. Ning Shu felt very melancholy. He suddenly missed the time when he had infinite strength. Chapter 153. Ning Shu's legs were numb from standing outside. Inside they were still having sex. Previously, Ning Shu had suspected that something had happened to Qi Sheng's penis. Now it seemed that it was still very mighty. How could something happen to the male lead's penis? Ning Shu lowered his numb legs and heard the door creak open. He looked up and saw Qi Sheng come out pretentiously. His face was flushed, and his expression was both happy and angry. Anyway, it was hard to describe. Qi Sheng glanced at Ning Shu's ugly face and said in a hoarse voice, "In the future, when I come here, you can only stay outside. I don't want to see your face." Ning Shu thought, "I fucking want to see you?" Ning Shu lowered his head and didn't speak. Qi Sheng snorted and left. Ning Shu walked into the room and smelled a strong scent of sex. Li Yufei sat lazily on a chair with only a piece of clothing draped over her body. Her face was full of satisfaction and aftertaste, as if she was still savoring it. Ning Shu covered his eyes. It was too dirty. What a world without moral integrity. Li Yufei opened her eyes and saw Ning Shu. She smiled at Ning Shu and said, "Your method is quite useful. I've never seen Brother Sheng so excited. He's so passionate and wild, as if he wants to eat me. Even now my legs are still weak." "Don't say it, please don't say it. A pure person like her shouldn't hear these words." Ning Shu quickly changed the topic. "Why don't you stay for the night, young master?" Li Yufei's voice was thick and nasal. She seemed to be a little shy as she said, "Brother Sheng and I haven't married yet. It's not suitable for us to stay for the night." Ning Shu was speechless. It was like taking off your pants to fart. Everyone in the Qi mansion knows what you two did. Now you want to pretend to abide by etiquette? Don't do it. Ning Shu looked at Li Yufei with a wooden face. Li Yufei's face was still filled with pleasure as she closed her eyes and fell asleep. "Ning Shu, at least go to bed. Is it really okay to sleep naked in this hall?" Ning Shu turned around and left without even closing the door. After returning to their residence, Yulan hurriedly came over to Ning Shu and asked, "Miss, that woman didn't do this to you, right?" "It's okay, your young miss is fine." Ning Shu felt really tired and fell asleep on the bed. The next day, Ning Shu was sleeping soundly when he was pulled out of bed. Ning Shu opened his eyes and saw that it was Li Yufei's maid. He immediately said, "Big sister, what is it that you won't let me sleep for?" The maid said, "What time is it now? You're still sleeping. Miss is looking for you." Ning Shu pursed his lips and followed the maid to see Li Yufei. Li Yufei's entire body seemed to be shrouded in a rosy glow. Her skin was pink and tender, and it was obvious that she had been nourished by someone. She was simply radiant. "Xiao Hong, come here. This is your reward." Li Yufei gave Ning Shu a purse. Ning Shu opened it and saw 2 heavy ingots of silver. Ning Shu quickly put away the silver. It would be a waste not to take it. "You did well this time," Li Yufei said. "Last night, I saw that Brother Sheng didn't like the whip very much. Is there any other way?" Ning Shu raised his thick eyebrows and said, "If you don't like the whip, then drip wax on it. You still have to use the whip. This time, you don't have to hit the young master. Let the young master hit you. These things need to be slowly adjusted. When the young master is used to this kind of stimulation, he will have no interest in other women. Naturally, his heart will be with Miss Yufei in the future." "Then help me prepare," Li Yufei said. Ning Shu nodded. Ning Shu knew that Qi Sheng wouldn't come to find Li Yufei. After all, he had screamed so miserably last night. However, Qi Sheng still came. Looking at the incomparably beautiful Li Yufei, he had a conflicted expression. Ning Shu felt that Qi Sheng still had potential in his bones. Qi Sheng also felt it. When the whip hit a person's body, the burning sensation caused a tremor. It was painful and seemed to be accompanied by pleasure. This strange feeling made Qi Sheng feel very strange. He felt a different kind of experience and pleasure. Therefore, after hesitating for a long time, Qixing still came to find Li Yufei. On the spot, they carried out a new method. The candle dripped on his chest. Qixing's expression seemed to be painful and happy. He waved the whip in his hand and hit Li Yufei, who was kneeling on the ground with all four limbs. The whip hit Li Yufei's white skin, and in an instant, purplish-red whip marks appeared. However, Qixing felt that his blood rushed to his head and his hair stood up. His whole body seemed to have been struck by lightning, and the electricity made all the cells in his body tremble. Li Yufei screamed in pain, but Qixing was even more excited and kept whipping Li Yufei. Ning Shu was outside the door and looked at the scene inside through the crack of the door. Did she open the door to a new world for these two? Don't thank her too much. In the following time, Li Yufei and Qixing seemed to be enjoying themselves, which greatly exceeded Ning Shu's expectations. This is fucking possible. Sure enough, it was a world without logic. It only needed a little spark to burn into a big fire, and it felt like it couldn't be stopped. Ning Shu's theoretical knowledge was emptied by Li Yufei, and then Li Yufei and Qixing found their own way to complete the trick. Those scenes made Ning Shu stunned, tied up and stuffed under. Ning Shu was a little disgusted. It was simply too evil. The evil of human nature could explode with just a little trigger. Ning Shu decided to leave. Seeing that Qixing and Li Yufei were having so much fun, he decided to let them be together for the rest of their lives. In the evening, Ning Shu leaned against the wall of the courtyard and looked at Li Yufei's room. The room was brightly lit. Ning Shu was waiting for a surprise. When there was a surprise, he immediately left. "Miss, are you done? This servant can't do it anymore." Yulan gasped and said. She struggled to grab Ning Shu's ankle on her shoulder to prevent Ning Shu from falling. Right away, right away. Thank you for your hard work, dear." Ning Shu stood on Yulan's shoulder and stared at Li Yufei's room. Then he heard Li Yufei's voice change and wail. This wail contained infinite pain. It was different from the usual painful and joyful voice. Ning Shu suddenly wanted to look up to the sky and laugh. The painful voice continued. Ning Shu jumped down from Yulan's shoulder and quickly said to Yulan, "Io, it's really hard on my little darling." The black-clothed and masked shadow guard looked at Ning Shu and Yulan and said, "Miss, if you want to see something, you can just sit on the courtyard wall. Why go through the trouble of stepping on people's shoulders?" Ning Shu felt that the shadow guard was distressed for Yulan, so he said this. He quickly nudged Yulan with his elbow. Yulan looked at Ning Shu inexplicably. "Miss, what are you looking at?" Yulan asked Ning Shu. Ning Shu waved his hand. "It's not suitable for children to know. Let's go." Chapter 154. Ning Shu and the other two left the city under the cover of the night. The brightly lit room of the Qi residence was bloody and sexy. Qixing held a whip in his hand and whipped Li Yufei on the ground. Li Yufei's body was covered with whip marks and dripping with blood. She kept moaning and shouted at Qixing, "Brother Sheng, stop hitting me. Yufei is in so much pain." Li Yufei felt the pain of being whipped and convulsed. Every time, she felt as if a piece of flesh had been hooked away. Qixing's eyes were red, but he was even more excited. He panted and comforted Li Yufei. "It's okay. Does it feel good? Yufei, I love you more and more now. I love you so much that I can't wait to whip you to death." Li Yufei was furious. Her body was in so much pain that she wanted to die. She smiled at Qixing and said, "Brother Sheng, give the whip to Yufei." Li Yufei took the whip and whipped Qixing fiercely. Qixing was in pain and pleasure. In the end, the two of them hugged each other with all kinds of excitement. Ning Shu sat in the carriage and whistled leisurely. He looked in the direction of Yi City and was very happy. He estimated that Li Yufei's snow-white skin would be ruined. As for whether her face would be hit by the whip, Ning Shu didn't know. She had specially made this whip. It had tiny barbs. Moreover, this whip had been soaked in salt and chilly water. If one was hit by the whip, the wound would probably be inflamed. It would be very normal for it to leave a scar. Ning Shu still remembered that Mu Yinluo was disfigured by Li Yufei. This was an eye for an eye. Ning Shu wiped off the heavy makeup on his face and felt that his head had become lighter. He felt very happy. Ning Shu whistled again. "Miss, can you stop whistling?" Yuelan said with a red face. Ningxu asked, "What's wrong?" "Your whistling is making me want to go to the toilet," Yuelan stammered. Just as Yulan's voice fell, the carriage stopped. Ningxu mischievously said to Yulan, "Look at how considerate Brother Shadow Guard is." Yuelan's face turned even redder. She lifted the curtain and went out. Ningxu's stomach also growled. He said to Yuelan, "Let's go together. Your young miss also has a bit of a stomachache. She probably ate too much chicken drumsticks at night." Ningxu squatted beside Yuelan as the two of them chatted. Ningxu said to Yuelan, "Miss, you're not young anymore. Have you ever thought about settling down? It's not a good idea to follow your young miss around like this. This servant has always been by Miss's side. Wherever Miss goes, this servant will follow." Yuelan covered her nose and said, "Miss, you should eat less meat in the future. I feel that your stomach has been a little bad recently. It's a little smelly." Ningxu was speechless. Wasn't it cruel to say such words to a beauty? Beauties were otherworldly. Ningxu couldn't find anything to wipe his butt with. In the end, he bitterly used tree leaves. He felt that the ancient times were really bitter. Next time, he would just buy rice paper to wipe his butt. The burrs on the leaves were really prickly. When they returned to the carriage, the shadow guard Ningxu, who was driving the carriage, asked, "Where are we going now? Let me think." Shen Qingqing also didn't know where the scholar with a belly full of wisdom was. In the plot, Qi Xing sent the disfigured and dying Mu Yanluo away. But he didn't expect that as soon as Mu Yanluo left, Li Yufei would send a thug to kill Mu Yanluo. Mu Yanluo lost her footing and fell off a cliff. She was rescued by a scholar and brought home. Where was that remote village? Ningxu didn't know. Or did he want her to jump off a cliff again? "Miss, where are we going?" the shadow guard asked. "How the fuck do I know where to go?" Ningxu said directly, "Go straight on this road. When you reach a fork in the road, turn left. Then keep turning left. When you see a village, go in." The shadow guard was speechless. Ningxu was so capricious. No matter what, the male and female leads would meet each other. Yulan asked worriedly, "Miss, what if we get lost?" "It's okay. There are always some shining existences guiding your miss forward." Ningxu supported her chin and said. Yulan was confused and shook her head. "I don't understand." Ningxu seemed to think of something and said to the shadow guard, "Do you have paper on you?" "Miss, what do you need paper for?" Yulan asked. "I'm used to using paper. I'm not used to using leaves," Ningxu said. Yuelan's eyes immediately filled with tears as she said sorrowfully, "Miss, you used to use paper. Now that it's your turn, Master will definitely feel very distressed." "Miss, are leaves comfortable to use? Find a smooth stone. It's much more comfortable than leaves." Ningxu covered her face. She was just borrowing toilet paper. Why did it lead to such a dirty topic? She felt like she was going crazy. Ningxu and Yulan talked and fell asleep. They leaned against each other and fell asleep. The sound of the horses' hooves was very rhythmic. The wilderness at night was very quiet. Occasionally, there would be two strange bird calls. Ding 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 ding. Li Yufei's abuse points are 100. Qi Sheng's abuse points are 100. 2333's voice sounded in Ningxu's mind. Ningxu stretched and showed a happy expression. Li Yufei's abuse points were 100. Her skin was probably ruined. As for how Qi Sheng's abuse points came about, Ningxu didn't know. His skin was probably ruined like Li Yufei's. TSK. In fact, Qi Sheng's abuse points were because he found that the maid named Little Red was missing the next day. He searched the whole Qi mansion but couldn't find her. Qi Sheng felt a sense of loss in his heart. This feeling had nothing to do with love. It was because he found out that he missed a pearl covered in dust. It was a kind of anger that scratched his heart and lungs. Qi Sheng guessed that this person named Little Red must be Mu Yanluo. She suddenly ran away, which made Qi Sheng very angry. He went to ask Li Yufei where Little Red was, but Li Yufei was busy saving her skin. The whip marks all over her body were inflamed and swollen. She didn't care about Little Red. Moreover, Li Yufei hated Little Red in her heart. Their props were all prepared by Little Red. This whip suddenly had a barb, and so much material was added. Now that Little Red had run away, Li Yufei didn't even want to talk about Little Red. Qi Sheng was very angry, but he couldn't directly tell Li Yufei that Little Red was Mu Yanluo. Qi Sheng still couldn't bear to part with Li Yufei, especially since they had a common hobby. Qi Sheng couldn't forget Mu Yanluo. He even imagined Mu Yanluo's white and flawless skin blooming with blood under his whip. Just thinking about it made Qi Sheng tremble all over, and a look of enjoyment appeared on his face. As he thought about it, Qi Sheng became excited. He pulled Li Yufei up from the bed and put the dog muzzle around her neck. He said to Li Yufei, "Come on, bark like a dog." Li Yufei's whip wounds hadn't healed yet. She felt a burning pain when her clothes rubbed against them. But when Li Yufei saw Qi Sheng's evil appearance, her body began to heat up and tremble. Chapter 155. Ning Shu and the others wandered around for a long time. Ning Shu was a little confused. Why hadn't they found brother Shuxing after such a long time? Where had the attraction between the male and female leads gone? Where had the plot gone? Ning Shu lifted the curtain and said to the secret guard driving the carriage, "Is there a place to rest?" The secret guard covered his face with a black cloth. Only his eyes and forehead were exposed. He looked at Ning Shu and said, "I haven't found a village yet." Ning Shu frowned. Yuelan said, "Miss, why don't we turn right? If we can't find it, we'll turn right." Ning Shu was speechless. "Forget it, I'm a little tired. Let's set up camp." Ning Shu waved his hand and said. The secret guard said, "There's no need to go through so much trouble. There's no need to set up camp. You and Yuelan can rest in the carriage. I'll find a tree to sleep in. But I don't want to sit in the carriage anymore. I've been in the carriage for so long. I want to lie down and sleep for the night," Ning Shu said with a bitter face. In the carriage, he felt that he couldn't straighten his hands and feet. He felt very tired. The secret guard looked at Ning Shu with a gaze that said, "You're a princess again." Ning Shu was a little annoyed by the secret guard's gaze. He said, "There's only the three of us. Why are you covering your face? Do you know that you're very attractive like this? We have to keep a low profile." "How can we keep a low profile when you look like you want to rob the rich and give to the poor?" The secret guard didn't say anything, nor did he take off the black cloth. Then, he went to find a place to set up camp. Ning Shu covered his heart and looked hurt. He said to Yuelan, "Your secret guard is so cold." Yuelan said with a straight face, "Miss, the secret guard doesn't belong to this servant's family. He belongs to your family." Ning Shu was speechless. The secret guard was still more caring. He even roasted some game for Ning Shu and Yuelan. The shadow guard handed over something that looked like a chicken or a pigeon. Ning Shu quickly reached out to take the roasted chicken, but the shadow guard turned his hand and handed it to Yuelan. Yuelan was stunned at first. She took the roast chicken and saw Ning Shu's awkward look. She handed the roast chicken to Ning Shu and said, "Miss, why don't you eat first?" Ning Shu's face trembled as he reluctantly said, "No need, you can eat it. This is from Brother Dark Guard." "Miss, please eat." Yuelan, Ning Shu said. "Ning Shu, I'm really not eating." Yuelan, "Miss, you should eat. This servant knows that you like to eat meat recently." Ning Shu, "No need, you can eat it. Big Brother Dark Guardian gave it to you." Yuelan, "Why don't we share it?" Ning Shu's face twitched violently. It was a skinny chicken. As for this, Ning Shu stuffed the chicken into Yuelan's mouth. "I told you to eat, so eat. Why are you talking so much nonsense?" Yuelan gnawed on the fragrant roast chicken. Ning Shu said, "Miss, it's quite fragrant. No wonder Master likes to eat game so much. It's very fragrant. Miss, wait a moment. The secret guard is about to finish roasting it." Ning Shu stared at the roast chicken in the secret guard's hand and swallowed his saliva. Suddenly, the secret guard threw the roast chicken into the fire. Then he pulled out his sword and pointed it at a certain place. He shouted loudly, "Who is it?" Yuelan threw away the roast chicken in her hand that had only bones left and righteously stood in front of Ning Shu. She imitated the cool tone of the secret guard brother and shouted loudly, "Who are you? Come out and die. Don't even think about hurting my family's young miss." "Ning Shu, why did you expose your miss?" Ning Shu quickly covered his face with a veil, only revealing a pair of eyes. After a series of rustling sounds, a man wearing a green robe with a bamboo basket on his back walked over. He cupped his hands and said politely, I didn't mean to disturb you. It's just that the sky is a bit dark, and I want to borrow some fire. Ning Shu slightly narrowed his eyes and looked at the man. It was too dark to see clearly, but he spoke politely. He had a strong feeling in his heart that this guy must be the male lead. Ning Shu coughed and said, It's fate that we meet. Such a warrior, come and drink a cup of water. The green-robed man elegantly cupped his hands and said to Ning Shu, Thank you, Mississippi. The green-robed man put down the bamboo basket on his back. There were some herbs in the bamboo basket. Ning Shu was confused for a moment. Was this guy a scholar or a divine doctor? Ning Shu's shadow guard said, See if the roast chicken in the fire is still edible. Let this warrior have a taste. The shadow guard glanced at Ning Shu and pulled out a black ball of roast chicken from the fire. It seemed that it was inedible. The green-robed man quickly said, Brother, there's no need to trouble yourself. I have my own dry food. As he spoke, he took out his own pancake. Seeing that the three people were staring at him, he took out a few more. Ning Shu said, It's something from the countryside. I don't know if you'll like it. It's okay. Ning Shu took a bite of the pancake and almost broke his teeth. It was really hard. After taking a bite, he handed the pancake to Yulan and said, You should also try it. It's good for your bowels. When the green-robed man heard Ning Shu's words, he frowned in discomfort. However, he didn't say anything in the end. Yulan took the pancake and took a bite. Then, she handed the pancake to the shadow guard. The shadow guard took a bite and put away the pancake. He said indifferently, This pancake is quite rare. The green-robed man quickly waved his hand and said, It's not rare. It's just some crude food from the countryside. It's fine as long as you like it. As he spoke, he gnawed on the pancake and took out some water from the bamboo basket. Ning Shu and the other two stared blankly at him as he gnawed on the pancake. His teeth were really good. Ning Shu coughed and asked, May I ask for your name? The man in the qipao seemed to be a little disgusted by the name warrior. He put down the pancake and cupped his hands elegantly. I'm called Wenruhua. Oh, a scholar. It was really a case of wearing out iron shoes in a fruitless search, only to find it without any effort. As expected, the attraction between the male and female leads led to the male lead naturally delivering himself to the door. Ning Shu immediately grabbed Wenruhua's hand. Wenruhua was startled and hurriedly broke free from Ning Shu's hand. He frowned and said, Miss, men and women shouldn't touch each other clearly. I hope you will respect yourself. The shadow guard and Yuelan at the side looked at Ning Shu strangely. Ning Shu forced himself to squeeze out 2 drops of cat piss. He said in an agitated and sorrowful voice, Cousin, I'm Qinxiang. By Qinxiang. Cousin. The shadow guard and Yuelan looked at Ning Shu even more strangely. Wenruhua, on the other hand, looked as if she had been struck by lightning. She looked at Ning Shu in a daze, his voice trembling with uncertainty. Cousin. It's me. Ning Shu replied crisply. Wenruhua's expression was very complicated. There was sadness, agitation, resentment, and a trace of deep longing and love. Her face was distorted. You look like you've changed a lot. Wenruhua looked at Ning Shu suspiciously. Are you really cousin Qinxiang? It's me. I'm by Qinxiang. Ning Shu said with certainty. Wenruhua's face instantly twisted. Ning Shu roared. Then why did you come back? Why did you come back? Chapter 156. Wenruhua was so agitated that her body trembled. Ning Shu roared and his saliva almost splashed onto Ning Shu. Ning Shu hurriedly took a step back and said in a sorrowful tone, Cousin, are you still blaming Qinxiang? Wenruhua's expression was ugly. She was so angry that she couldn't speak. Yuelan couldn't stand it anymore. She pulled Ning Shu to the side and asked, Miss, when did you change your name? When did you have such a distant cousin? Ning Shu patted Yuelan's head and comforted her. Be good, don't make a fuss. Your miss naturally has her reasons. Wenruhua looked at Ning Shu with a complicated expression and asked, Why did you come back this time? Naturally, I came back to find cousin. Ning Shu said matter-of-factly. Wenruhua was so angry that she gasped for breath. She looked at Ning Shu with red eyes and said, You're already married. Why did you come back to find me? What do you take me for? There was actually a rather twisted story that changed when Ruhua's fate. It was just that when Ruhua and his engaged cousin were in love with each other. Moreover, when Ruhua was a very talented person with a good family background. When Ruhua promised to marry Bai Qinxiang as soon as he passed the imperial examination. However, before when Ruhua could take the imperial examinations, she was struck by a bolt from the blue. Her cousin's father ignored the engagement and directly betrothed Bai Qinxiang to the son of a high official. Moreover, that high official wasn't someone he could afford to offend. When Ruhua wanted to find Bai Qinxiang for an explanation, they were so in love in the past, but her cousin married someone else just like that. When Ruhua found Bai Qinxiang said guiltily, "I'm sorry, cousin. I can't wait any longer. Instead of waiting for you to take the imperial examinations, I'd rather choose someone who's already successful and famous. Cousin, forget about me. You have someone more worthy of your love." When Ruhua simply couldn't believe it. In the past, they had been so sweet and intimate. In the blink of an eye, he could be so heartless. So what if they had feelings for each other in the past? When Ruhua's liver was about to explode from anger, women were all vain sluts, and those officials were all tyrannical executioners who brought misery to people's lives. This world was really dark and filthy. After when Ruhua got drunk, she abandoned her family business and ran to a remote village to teach. She often lamented that she was full of wisdom, but had no use for it. However, she also despised the darkness of the official path. When Ruhua swore that she would never step into the officialdom in this lifetime. When Ruhua hated that official's son for stealing her beloved, she even hated that official. She hid in this corner and prepared to spend the rest of her life there. The corner of Ning Shu's mouth twitched. He felt that when Ruhua's brain was different from that of ordinary men. Normally, a strong-willed man would work hard when faced with this kind of situation. He would work hard to climb up, and then go back to slap his cousin's cheap face. He would marry a woman who was better than his cousin, and live a better life. He would take revenge on his cousin, and make her regret it. However, when Ruhua directly shrunk back and hid, she was depressed that she couldn't achieve her goal. She was extremely pretentious. Even Ning Shu didn't like this man. A man's responsibility and wisdom were undoubtedly revealed when something big happened. However, when Ruhua was clearly the kind of person who didn't have much responsibility, sometimes he felt that she was quite childish and quite a bit of a narcissist. Why don't you say something? Why did you come back? Did that official's son abandon you? You're not a pretty girl to begin with, so of course he's tired of you. When Ruhua's voice was a little shrill, as if she was venting her anger. Ding, abuse points 20. Ning Shu moi. Did you miss your family? 2333's voice sounded in Ning Shu's mind. Ning Shu, scram. A woman who doesn't mean what she says. 2333 coldly snorted and disappeared. Say something. Why didn't you say anything? Why did you come back to me? Did you think that I would still accept you? I was tricked by you once. I won't be tricked by you a second time. When Ruhua screamed hysterically at Ning Shu was communicating with the system in his mind. When Ruhua's screams were almost deafening, Ning Shu couldn't help but dig his ears. Previously, when Ruhua looked like a scholar, why was he acting like a chinibu now? Young man, your image has been ruined quite a bit. Hey, who are you? How dare you say such things to my young miss? Do you believe that I'll let the young miss's secret guards poke you into a sieve? Yulan, and when Ruhua retorted, know your identity. Our young miss is not someone you can casually criticize. When Ruhua's face showed a bitter expression, she revealed a mocking and self-deprecating smile and said lightly, Yes, who am I? Of course I can't compare to you, the wife of an official. Yulan looked at Wen Ruhua, as if she was looking at an idiot. Didn't he even suspect that her miss was her cousin? He didn't even try to verify it before roaring loudly here. Seriously, she felt that there was something wrong with his brain, and it was quite serious. The secret guards couldn't stand it anymore. Ning Shu asked, Young miss, do you want to get a tent for your cousin? Before Ning Shu could open his mouth, Wen Ruhua immediately shouted, No need, Bai Qinxiang. I don't need your charity. I'll sleep outside. Ning Shu was speechless. She was so stubborn. Ning Shu thought that when Ruhua would just leave. Sleeping outside showed that she had a backbone? Ning Shu yawned. He really didn't want to argue with Wen Ruhua anymore. He pulled Yulan into the tent and said, "Turn off the lights and sleep." Wen Ruhua looked at the tent with a complicated expression. It was as if she wanted to see through the tent. The secret guards only glanced at Wen Ruhua. They took a rope and tied it between two trees. Then they slept on the rope like Xiao Longnu. However, they didn't have Xiao Longnu's elegant beauty. The secret guards were only frightened. When Ruhua saw that no one was paying attention to her, she leaned against a tree and stared blankly at Ning Shu's tent. When Ruhua stared until her eyes were red, from time to time, she would grind her teeth. In the quiet night, she looked particularly gloomy. Ning Shu was sleeping soundly in the tent with Yulan in his arms. He didn't know that when Ruhua was pacing back and forth outside the tent after a sleepless night. Even if Ning Shu knew, he wouldn't care. However, when Ruhua's heart was much more irritable, she couldn't help but wonder what happened to Bai Qinxiang. Why did she come back to find her? What did she think of her? Why did she abandon her just like that? Why was his heart still so unsettled? Why was he affected by this vain woman? When Ruhua paced outside the tent for the whole night. In the morning, she saw Ning Shu stretching comfortably. The anger that she had suppressed for the whole night was about to explode. However, when she saw Ning Shu's eyes under the veil, she was stunned. Chapter 157. When Ruhua looked at the exposed eyes and was stunned, she asked, "Bai Qinxiang, why are you so different from before? Are you not Bai Qinxiang?" It was dark and she was wearing a white veil. When Ruhua could not see her face clearly. Now when Ruhua felt that this was not her cousin, Bai Qinxiang could only be considered delicate and pretty. She was not very tall. However, the person in front of her was tall and elegant. Obviously this was not Bai Qinxiang. Ning Shu raised her eyebrows and said calmly, "Cousin, I am Bai Qinxiang. I know that I broke the promise between us. But now I have received my retribution." When Ruhua frowned, the person in front of her was not Bai Qinxiang. However, she seemed to know about her and Bai Qinxiang. What was going on? When Ruhua was dumbfounded, Ning Shu held her face in her hands and said, "Do you feel that my eyes have become watery and that I've grown taller? After all, I married into a rich family. Eating sea cucumbers, abalone wings, and bathing in milk every day is very normal for there to be changes. If you eat well, you will naturally develop a second spring." Bai Qinxiang was only 15 or 16 when she married. Who knew? If the real Bai Qinxiang stood in front of Wen Ruhua might not even recognize her. "Are you showing off your rich and noble life to me?" When Ruhua looked at Ning Shu coldly. "Then why did you come back to me?" Ding! Abuse points 20, current abuse points 40. 2333 said excitedly. "Oh, not bad. You have 40 abuse points in one night. Ning Shu, do well. Maybe we will make a fortune this time." Ning Shu said, "Get lost. I'm heartless woman. I hate you. Don't you ever see me again." As 2333 wiped his tears, Ning Shu heard 2333's simulated footsteps in her head. 2333 yelled at Ning Shu, "Stop me! Stop me! Ning Shu, get away from me!" Ning Shu looked at Wen Ruhua, who hadn't slept the entire night, and looked very haggard. His green robes were stained with dust and grass. His face was haggard, and the stubble on his chin had turned blue. This image was too tragic. When Ruhua's heart ached when her cousin married another man out of vanity, Ning Shu's casual words triggered the pain in Wen Ruhua's heart. This was the unbearable pain that Wen Ruhua buried deep in her heart. Ning Shu felt that Wen Ruhua was both pitiful and hateful. She was a weak and incompetent person who couldn't take any blow, and even gave up on her own life. She had no sense of responsibility at all. How could such a man become the male lead? He reckoned that he would have to share Mu Yinluo with the other 7 men in the future. Ning Shu would feel that he was being bullied. These male leads were either powerful, rich, or highly skilled in martial arts. They were neither good nor evil. But when Ruhua felt that it was completely meaningless. Even if she read a lot of books, it was useless. If she couldn't get the female lead, she would have to fuck herself. Ning Shu's imagination ran further and further away, and he felt that he couldn't pull it back. When Ruhua grabbed the bamboo basket and prepared to leave, Ning Shu hurriedly asked, "Where are you going?" When Ruhua said coldly, "Naturally, I'm going back." Ning Shu said, "I'll go with you." When Ruhua immediately roared, "By Qinxiang, I'm not something you can throw away as you wish. You're wasting your time." Ning Shu didn't care about Wen Ruhua's attitude at all. He got into the carriage and followed behind Wen Ruhua. Wen Ruhua was so angry that she quickened her pace. But how could her 2 legs outrun the 4 legs of a horse? Even if Wen Ruhua's 3rd leg was added, it was useless. Wen Ruhua really couldn't do anything about the people behind her. She could only let them go and ignore them. Yuelon lifted the curtain and looked at Wen Ruhua in front of her. Ning Shu asked, "Miss, is there something wrong with that person's brain?" "There's nothing wrong with her. She just feels that she's the most miserable person in the world and feels sorry for herself," Ning Shu said lightly. "For a woman, and for such an unworthy woman, she ruined her life and gave up her life." No, it should be Wen Ruhua who ruined her life. She ran away from home and didn't care about her parents who were already old. She ran to the countryside to teach and educate people. He really didn't know what kind of students Wen Ruhua taught were like. In the plot, Mu Yanluo was chased by the thugs sent by Li Yufei and fell off a cliff. She was saved by Wen Ruhua, who was picking herbs. Although she survived, Mu Yanluo's face was disfigured and her body was mottled with traces of torture. It was simply unbearable to look at. The world's most beautiful woman became an ugly person. Mu Yanluo could only light a mask and cover her head every day. Her face was covered and only her eyes could be seen. Mu Yanluo's heart was only numb to her disfigurement. She even let it be. Everything was because of her appearance, and she had suffered such a thing. After Mu Yanluo recovered from her injuries, Wen Ruhua didn't drive her away. The 2 of them lived like this. Their relationship was ordinary. Mu Yanluo was grateful to Wen Ruhua for saving her. She helped Wen Ruhua with some housework, chopping firewood, cooking and washing clothes. Just like that they settled down. Sometimes, Mu Yanluo would send food to the school. She was ridiculed by Wen Ruhua's students as ugly. Some bold and naughty students even threw stones at Mu Yanluo. Wen Ruhua despised Mu Yanluo for embarrassing herself. She couldn't be a person in front of the students, and couldn't establish her prestige in front of the students. She forbade Mu Yanluo from coming to the school in the future. Otherwise, she would drive her out. Mu Yanluo was very sad. From a beautiful woman to an ugly person, the difference was too big. Although Mu Yanluo's face was disfigured, her exposed eyes were very charming. They were as clear as water, flickering with a burning light. Just a glance at them would make one's bones go soft. Because of these eyes, Mu Yanluo was fancied by the village head's son. This village bully was also desperate. He directly said that although her face was disfigured, her eyes were still very beautiful. She was a woman after all. Once the lights were turned off, and the quilt was turned off, she would be the same as a woman. When Wen Ruhua heard about this, she ridiculed Mu Yanluo. She said that Mu Yanluo couldn't stand loneliness, even though her face was disfigured. Did all women like to hook up with powerful men? The village head's son was definitely someone with power and influence in this village. He reminded Wen Ruhua of her cousin, the one who betrayed her and became a rich madam. Women were all so ungrateful. Wen Ruhua and the village head's son didn't get along. If it weren't for the fact that Wen Ruhua was the only teacher in the village bully would have long wanted to kill this ignorant Wen Ruhua. Wen Ruhua hated people with power and couldn't see eye to eye with this village bully. She felt that this village bully was simply a bully in the village. People were angry, but didn't dare to say anything. The village bully thought that Wen Ruhua had a hole in her brain. Chapter 158. The village bully couldn't bear to see Wen Ruhua always pointing fingers at him, as if he had done something that angered the heavens and the people. It was as if he was the arbiter, as if he was a great hero who fought against the evil forces. The village bully wanted Mu Yanluo just to make things difficult for Wen Ruhua. How dare he be so arrogant in his own land? Wen Ruhua was so angry that he even resented Mu Yanluo. One night, he directly raped Mu Yanluo, saying that since she lacked a man, he would be merciful and satisfy her. However, when Ruhua despised Mu Yanluo, when he found out that Mu Yanluo wasn't a virgin, he despised her even more. He finished in a hurry, and didn't forget to despise Mu Yanluo, who was lying on the Kong bed, while pulling up his pants. After having sex with Mu Yanluo, when Ruhua seemed to be in the right, he straightened his chest and said, "So what if you're the village bully? Even if you want to have sex with Mu Yanluo, you're just going to have sex with her used shoes." Mu Yanluo didn't expect that she would still have such a fate after being disfigured. She still had to be treated like this by a man. In an instant, Mu Yanluo wanted to die. Mu Yanluo directly hung herself from the beam, but when Ruhua saved her, when Ruhua threatened that if Mu Yanluo wanted to die, she would give her to the village bully. Even her corpse would be given to the village bully. Mu Yanluo was so scared that she didn't dare to seek death anymore. Just like that, she lived with Wen Ruhua. A single man and a single woman lived under the same roof. In addition, the two had already broken through the paper window. Wen Ruhua and Mu Yanluo were entwined from time to time, which made Wen Ruhua feel very good. However, in his heart, Mu Yanluo was just a prostitute who could satisfy his physical needs at any time. He never treated her as an equal. Ning Shu took a deep breath, as if he had a toothache. He felt that Mu Yanluo was inexplicably implicated wherever she went, and the one who suffered was Mu Yanluo. Wen Ruhua was also a beast with a human face. What kind of ability was it to bully a disfigured woman? He even despised her while doing it. Later on, the village bully felt that Mu Yanluo was too pitiful after being bullied by Wen Ruhua. So he told Mu Yanluo to send her away. Wen Ruhua, who had just returned from the school, saw the village tyrant and Mu Yanluo pulling each other. She immediately misunderstood and rushed into the central room. She pulled out her ancestral sword and randomly slashed at the village tyrant. As a result, in the chaos, she directly stabbed Mu Yanluo in the stomach. At this time, Mu Yanluo was pregnant and was bleeding profusely from head to toe. When Ruhua was scared out of her wits, Mu Yanluo, whose heart was as dead as ashes, fell and jumped into the river outside the house. The villagers searched for her body for several days but couldn't find it. When Ruhua was so dispirited that she wanted to die, only when Mu Yanluo disappeared did Wen Ruhua realize that she had fallen in love with Mu Yanluo. This was the second blow in her life. When Ruhua wanted to jump into the river, in the end, he was stopped by the village chief, who blabbered on and on about how the children in the school needed him. Without him, the children wouldn't know what to do. Then Wen Ruhua said in her heart, "Yanluo, because someone needs me, I can only live in this world. When the time comes, I will come and find you. I love you," blabbered on. Ning Shu not only gasped for air, but also kept wiping the cold sweat on her forehead. Seeing Ning Shu's face full of cold sweat, Yuelon hurriedly took out her handkerchief and helped wipe the sweat. She asked, "Miss, what's wrong?" "I was scared stiff," Ning Shu said with a toothache. The weak scholar was as vicious as a murderer. Yuelon hurriedly looked left and right. Her face was a little pale. She stuck close to Ning Shu and asked with trembling teeth, "Miss, what did you see? Don't scare me." Ning Shu pushed Yuelon away and said in a bad mood, "How can there be a ghost in broad daylight?" Yuelon immediately breathed a sigh of relief. "Yes, it's broad daylight. What scared you? She's just a child. Don't ask." Ning Shu lifted the curtain and saw Wen Ruhua walking in front of him. His speed was a little slow, so she guessed that he had left. "Cousin, do you want to get on the carriage? You're a scholar. You must be tired after such a long journey," Ning Shu shouted at Wen Ruhua. Wen Ruhua stopped and turned to look at Ning Shu. She asked with a cold face, "How long are you going to follow me? By Qinxiang, there's no relationship between us anymore." "Of course there's no relationship. The real Bai Qinxiang is enjoying life and has long forgotten about you. You're thinking too much," Ning Shu said. "Wherever you go, Qinxiang will follow. Now Qinxiang has nowhere to go, so I can only look for you." When Ruhua was so angry that her body was trembling, her face was ashen, and she looked at Ning Shu with a lingering and hateful gaze. "Get on, cousin," Ning Shu smiled and said to Wen Ruhua. Wen Ruhua waved his hand and said coldly, Men and women shouldn't interact so clearly. I won't get on the carriage. I'll sit outside. When Ruhua put down the bamboo basket on her back and hugged it to her chest, she sat beside the secret guard. Ningxu was speechless. Ningxu felt that when Ruhua's way of thinking was very strange. If she had a backbone, she wouldn't get on the carriage. Did she think that sitting outside was an act of backbone? Or was she used to finding excuses for her actions? Ningxu rolled his eyes and put down the curtain. He said to Wen Ruhua through the curtain, "Cousin, why are you picking herbs? Don't you even have the money to buy herbs? Why do you have to pick herbs so painstakingly?" Ding! Abuse points 10. Current abuse points 50. Ningxu raised his eyebrows. He had hurt Wen Ruhua again. This cousin's identity was simply a weapon of mass destruction. A casual word of disdain could cause damage to his scholarly cousin's heart. When Ruhua snorted coldly, her tone full of sarcasm, "How can a rich madam like you understand the lives of ordinary people like us? Although I'm poor, I'm earning my own living. At least I'm better than some people who betray their trust and earn their wealth. Since you can't stand it, why are you following me?" TSK. Look at how righteous she sounded. If it wasn't for the abuse points, Ningxu would have thought that Wen Ruhua really didn't care about it. Wen Ruhua probably cared about it to death. His fiancée left him because of glory and wealth. Money and power were the pain in Wen Ruhua's heart. She wanted to obtain them, but she was very repulsed by them. Ningxu rolled his eyes again. He felt that her brain had become abnormal after reading so much. Everyone said that reading was wise, but Ningxu felt that Wen Ruhua was becoming more pedantic the more she read. Other people absorbed the essence from reading, but Wen Ruhua absorbed the dregs from reading. To say that Wen Ruhua was full of wisdom was an exaggeration. He was just good-looking and had the temperament of a weak scholar. He was different from other cool and domineering male leads. Chapter 159. The carriage sped along the sandy road. No one spoke in the carriage, and the atmosphere was heavy. When Ruhua looked at the masked secret guard beside her, he had a murderous aura and a cold look in his eyes. It was obvious that he was a highly skilled martial artist. Bai Qinxiang and he were in two different worlds. Bai Qinxiang now had guards and maids when she went out. She really looked like a noble lady. Ningxu and Yuelan fell asleep in the carriage. It was easy to doze off when the carriage was rocking. Ningxu woke up from her nap. She lifted the curtain and asked Wen Ruhua, "How far is it from your village? You can run so far just to pick herbs. You're pretty good at running." Hearing Ningxu's words, Wen Ruhua's face flushed red and then turned pale. She said coldly, "It's none of your business where I go to pick herbs." Ningxu ran his fingers through his hair and said indifferently, "You probably picked all the herbs around the village. That's why you ran so far. Cousin, I thought you'd be fine after leaving me. I didn't expect you to be so down and out." When Ruhua's face flashed with different colors, she was so angry that her chest was heaving up and down. Ding! Abuse points 10. Current abuse points 60. Ningxu thought, "Damn, I like this feeling of love and hate." Ningxu pursed his lips and put down the curtain. It was obvious that he didn't want to talk to Wen Ruhua. They could hear Wen Ruhua's heavy breathing from outside the carriage. "Stop the carriage. I want to get off." "Bai Qinxiang, what do you mean by this? Did you come back to humiliate me?" When Ruhua said to Ningxu in the carriage, Ningxu said indifferently, "Cousin, I'm here to seek shelter from you. I'm at my wit's end. Only you can save me." When Ruhua was furious, "This is the attitude of a beggar. Bai Qinxiang, let me tell you, I don't owe you anything. How dare you come back now?" "Cousin, didn't Qinxiang apologize to you? In the past, Qinxiang let you down. Now Qinxiang knows that she was wrong." Knowing that cousin didn't go for the imperial exam because of Qinxiang felt touched and guilty. That's why Qinxiang came back this time to urge cousin to study and then go for the imperial exam. Ningxu lied. When Ruhua's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. How could this woman have the cheek to say such words? Back then, she had left as soon as she said she would. Now, she was back, saying that she would accompany her for the imperial examinations. When Ruhua was so angry that her blood was boiling. How could a woman be so cheap and shameless? Could it be that she had no shame at all? When Ruhua wanted to get off the carriage, but the secret guard didn't stop the carriage. When Ruhua didn't have the courage to jump off the carriage, so she arrived at the entrance of the village with an ashen face. Ningshu looked at the village with smoke rising in spirals. He turned to Wen Ruhua and said, "How did you find such a remote village to live in seclusion for the rest of your life? It's not easy." Wen Ruhua didn't say anything and walked into the village. Ningshu's secret guard in Yuelan said, "Let's go too. There's a place to rest." The secret guard glanced at Ningshu and said, "Miss, I'll stay here and guard the carriage. When it's time to eat, you can ask Yuelan to send some food over." That was good too. With the secret guard's appearance, he would probably cause panic if he entered the village. "All right then. Guard our carriage well. We'll need it in the future." Ningshu brought Yuelan and quickly walked into the village. When they arrived at the entrance of the village, they saw Wen Ruhua talking to a woman. This woman had a golden hairpin on her head and looked barely passable. When she looked at Wen Ruhua, her eyes were shining with adoration. However, Wen Ruhua's expression was full of impatience and annoyance. She kept looking back. When she saw Ningshu, Ningshu showed a good expression for the first time. He gently said to Ningshu, "Cousin, why are you only here now? I've been waiting for you for a long time." Before Ningshu could say anything, the woman with the golden hairpin suddenly exploded. She pointed at Ningshu and asked Wen Ruhua sharply, "Mr. Wen, who is this woman? What's the relationship between the two of you?" "It's none of your business. Miss He, I hope you won't disturb me in the future. Otherwise, other people's gossip will be bad for your reputation." He Xiaohua's finely trimmed eyebrows suddenly raised. She put her hands on her hips and said, "Who dares to talk about me in this He village? So what if I like you? As long as you marry into my family, your life will be better than now. In the future, you won't have to suffer when your students can't pay for their tuition." When Ruhua saw He Xiaohua's vulgar appearance and said sternly, "Miss He, I'll say it again. It's impossible between you and me. Just give up." He Xiaohua was a woman after all. She was rejected by Wen Ruhua in front of such a beautiful woman like Ningshu. He Xiaohua was angry and anxious. Ningshu said fiercely, "Just you wait," and ran away crying. Ningshu raised his eyebrows and said to Wen Ruhua, "This woman is very cute. She really likes you. Why are you so against it?" Wen Ruhua's expression became worse. It was as if it was embarrassing to be liked by He Xiaohua. Moreover, He Xiaohua's temperament and appearance were not as good as Bai Qinxiang. Even Wen Ruhua couldn't deny that Bai Qinxiang was very beautiful now. Although her face was covered, her graceful figure and noble temperament were countless times better than the rustic He Xiaohua. Moreover, her light tone just now had a hint of surprise. It was as if he, Wen Ruhua, had fallen to the point of being liked by a woman like her. Ding abuse points 10. Current abuse points 70. 2333's voice was very excited. "Come on, Ningshu. Do your best and raise the abuse points to 100. She was just casually asking a question. How did she end up poking at Wen Ruhua's sore spot? Why was her heart so fragile? Wen Ruhua flicked her sleeve and coldly snorted. "It is impossible between me and Xiaohua. Her brother relies on the fact that his father is the village chief to bully everyone in the village. You also saw earlier that Xiaohua is just like her brother, unruly and overbearing. Even if I, Wen Ruhua, am unable to bear it, I will not marry such an unruly and rude girl." Ningshu was speechless. He should really let this woman be alone for the rest of her life. She felt too good about herself. If she was in a modern society where there were more men than women, she would definitely be slapped in the face. He felt that this Wen Ruhua did not know how to be a person at all. She was simply an idiot. No wonder He Xiaohua's brother hated Wen Rusheng. Ningshu chuckled and did not say anything. Beside him, Yuelan also curled her lips. Ningshu followed Wen Ruhua to the thatched hut. The hut was surrounded by a bamboo fence. Some messy vegetables were planted inside. There were overgrown weeds, and no one took care of it. Not far from the hut was a big river. In the plot, Mu Yanluo jumped into this river because she was injured and had a miscarriage. Chapter 160. Ning Shu couldn't figure out why Wen Ruhua would choose such a place near the river. If there was a storm and the river rose, wasn't she afraid that it would wash away his house? Or was it to serve the plot, so that Mu Yanluo could drag her injured body into the river and disappear to meet the next man? Ning Shu stood in front of the fence and didn't enter. Wen Ruhua looked back at Ning Shu and said sarcastically, "I forgot that you are the wife of a noble official. How can you get used to living in such a thatched house?" Ning Shu nodded seriously and said, "I'm not used to it. Cousin, I didn't expect you to be living such a hard life. You should have come to me. I can let you live in a house with green walls and gray tiles from my fingertips. You don't have to live in such a house." When Ruhua's face instantly turned ferocious, Ning Shu roared, "Put away your disgusting face. You only got your money by selling your dignity. You're disgusting." Ning Shu was speechless. Ning Shu felt that there was something wrong with Wen Ruhua's brain. Her paranoia was serious. It was as if she was hurt by the whole world. Ning Shu stood from a woman's point of view. Bai Qinxiang was a little vain, and had chosen a man with better conditions. In Wen Ruhua's eyes, this was an unforgivable sin. Had Wen Ruhua not considered that his conditions were not good enough, and that he could not give Bai Qinxiang a sense of security? Amipa. Ning Shu felt that it was good that the woman called Bai Qinxiang left Wen Ruhua. Even if she had to go through thick and thin with him, she should be with a man who was worth it. Wen Ruhua was an irresponsible man. Looking at him, he didn't have much of a future. Ning Shu pursed his lips and took out an ingot of silver from his pouch. He threw it on the ground and smashed a small hole. He said arrogantly, "Cousin, Qinxiang isn't comfortable living in this house. Take this silver and ask the village's carpenter to repair the house. I'm afraid this thatched house will leak when it rains." When Ruhua's expression was ferocious, she picked up the silver on the ground and threw it at Ning Shu. She said fiercely, "Scram, take your stinky money and scram. I, Wen Ruhua, would rather starve to death than accept food given to me." Ning Shu dodged the attack of the silver and picked up the silver on the ground. He slowly placed it into the pouch and calmly said, "Qinxiang only saw that cousin was living too hard and wanted to sponsor cousin so that cousin could live a better life. Afterwards, cousin would use the time to dig herbs to study. Cousin is full of knowledge, and it would be a pity to bury these things. What does it have to do with you? Ever since you broke the promise between us, I have nothing to do with you. Bai Qinxiang, what identity are you using to interfere in my life now?" When Wen Ruhua heard that Ning Shu was going to sponsor her, Wen Ruhua felt like her heart was being torn apart. He would rather die than accept this woman's money. Even if he looked miserable now, his heart was free, and he would not show fear in front of Bai Qinxiang. Ning Shu seemed to compromise and said, "Okay, whatever cousin says is right. Qinxiang will not let cousin accept Qinxiang's money. Cousin, where do I live?" When Ruhua saw that Ning Shu had softened and suddenly felt very carefree. Ever since they met, Bai Qinxiang had been acting high and mighty. She said that she came to seek shelter, but her attitude was very bad. She did not have the attitude that one should have when seeking shelter. Ning Shu and Yuelan chose a room. The room was very simple. Ning Shu suspected that the room would be blown away by the wind. Moreover, the room was a little damp. The thatch at the damp part of the wall was wet and rotten. How could anyone live in this kind of room? Yuelan looked around and her face darkened. Ning Shu said, "Miss has never lived in this kind of room since she was in trouble. How can anyone live in this kind of room? There are insects everywhere. They will bite people to death if they fall asleep. It is better to set up a tent in the yard. It is better than this room." Ning Shu sighed. He thought of Mu Yanluo's disfigurement and living in such a place. She had to face Wen Ruxing's cynicism and do housework. She even had to satisfy Wen Ruhua's desires. At that time, Mu Yanluo struggled to live. No wonder she was accidentally injured and had a miscarriage. She jumped into the river. This kind of life was worse than death. Ning Shu wiped his face and said, "Let's set up a tent in the yard. It is not worth it to be bitten by insects." Ning Shu would not let himself suffer. Ning Shu and Yuelan worked together to set up a tent. When Ruhua's face darkened as she looked at them, she said coldly, Since you are not used to living in my room, why did you come to me? Aren't you very rich? You can find a better place to live than this place. Ning Shu looked at Wen Ruhua from the corner of his eye, and said disdainfully, Cousin, have you never thought about why I refused to marry you? Ding. Abuse points 10. Current abuse points 80. Ning Shu, hurry up. Faster. Put in more effort. 2333's voice sounded in Ning Shu's mind. Ning Shu said, Scram. Why? When Rushing said mockingly, Isn't it because you are vain and broke the promise between us to marry the son of an official? You want to live a good life. Ning Shu waved his hand. No, of course not. If you want to know why, I can tell you. Although you're not bad looking, you don't pay for your meals with your face. Although you're well read, you've never taken the imperial examinations. You haven't even taken the imperial examinations. As for the high scholar and elementary scholar examinations, there's no need to talk about them. You've been studying since you were young, but when you got married and started your career, you were still a nobody. You didn't have any scholarly achievements, and the imperial examinations were all level 1, 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 level 1. By the time you're done with the examinations, you might not be able to pass many times. At the very least, you should set an example for the children of He Village, and let them know that they can make a name for themselves by studying. You've studied so many books, but you live in such a dilapidated house, wear clothes full of patches, and eat food without oil. The children in school think that you're so miserable that studying is useless. What's the point of studying? Do you still have dignity in front of the children? Only when you are strong can people respect you. Power, money, and ability are all signs of strength. Cousin, what do you think you have? I admit that I have betrayed the promise between us, but what you gave me was a promise that was far in the future, an unseen and untouchable promise. Moreover, this promise was illusory to begin with. Am I supposed to give up my down-to-earth life for this illusory promise? Ning Shu looked at Wen Ruhua with a pair of watery eyes. Cousin, am I right? Chapter 161. Cousin, what do you think you have? What do you have? What do you have? Cousin, am I right? Am I right? Am I right? When Ruhua's mind was filled with these words, when Ruhua staggered and looked at Ning Shu with a hand over her heart. When she met Ning Shu's sincere eyes, she felt the blood in her chest churning. She felt dizzy, and her heart felt like it was being squeezed tightly by a pair of hands, as if it was going to explode in her chest. When Ruhua roared word by word, You're just finding excuses for your betrayal. You're just quibbling. You're quibbling. Blood seeped out of Wen Ruhua's mouth. Bai Qingxiang's words were just mocking her incompetence. She was the one who had betrayed her promise. How could she be so righteous? Ning Shu pursed his lips. Even animals would choose strong males to reproduce. That was the law of survival. Why did she have to cling on to a stupid promise? If Bai Qingxiang really accompanied Wen Ruhua to success, perhaps Wen Ruhua would be the one who betrayed her promise. Ding! 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 Abuse points reached 20. Abuse points reached 100. Ning Shu, you're amazing. I like it so much. Come on, come on. 2333's annoying voice sounded in Ning Shu's mind. Ning Shu felt embarrassed. How did 2333 become like this? It was a disgrace. Ning Shu said, Go to hell. When Ruhua staggered into the house and closed the door, she didn't want to face Ning Shu. Yuelan looked at Ning Shu with admiration. Miss, you made people vomit blood. You're amazing. You're invincible in the battle of words. Ning Shu raised his eyebrows and looked at Yuelan. Battle of words? Yes. Is there a problem, miss? Yuelan looked at Ning Shu in confusion. Ning Shu patted Yuelan's shoulder. As long as you're happy. Ning Shu and Yuelan were busy for a while, and finally made the tent comfortable. It was time for lunch. But when Ruhua locked herself in the house, and had no intention of coming out, the house was also quiet. Ning Shu suspected that when Ruhua was dead in the house, Ning Shu stood at the door and shouted, Cousin, are you there? Squeak if you're here. The room was quiet and no one spoke. Ning Shu raised his eyebrows. The male lead shouldn't be so weak that he would die so easily. He then shouted, "Cousin, it's time to eat." "What are we eating?" "There's nothing to eat in the kitchen, not even a grain of rice. Even the rats are crying and running out." "Cousin, how did you end up like this?" "Cousin, are you there?" The house was still quiet. Ning Shu felt that something was wrong. He said to Yuelon, "Yuelon, come and knock on the door. Cousin is in trouble inside. Don't worry about whether this broken door can be fixed in the future. Anyway, this house is very poor. There's nothing that a thief would want. Don't worry about the door." Yuelon nodded. She took a deep breath and prepared to use her body to knock on the door. However, the door creaked open. When Ruhua looked at Ning Shu with a purple face, her eyes were filled with extreme disgust. It was fine that Bai Qingxiang had betrayed her promise, but now she was using harsh words to provoke him. She was even more annoying than Bai Qingxiang, who had betrayed her promise. It could be said that Ning Shu had become Wen Ruhua's enemy. Ning Shu pretended not to see the disgust in Wen Ruhua's eyes and asked, "Cousin, what are we eating?" Wen Ruhua said coldly, "Don't you have a lot of money? Just find a random family, and you'll have food to eat." Ning Shu looked at Wen Ruhua and said, "Then what are you eating? Why do you care what I eat?" "Bai Qingxiang, I don't have any objections if you want to stay here. I can't control you, but don't even think about interfering in my life. You just want to make it up to me, to make up for the guilt in your heart. I won't let you get what you want," Wen Ruhua said coldly. "Who wants to make it up to you? You just casually said it, and you took it seriously." Ning Shu despised her in his heart. Why didn't he think that she was here for revenge? She was here to make things difficult for you. Since Wen Ruhua had said so, Ning Shu naturally wouldn't let himself suffer. He prepared to take Yuelon to eat farmer's food. Before he left, he asked Wen Ruhua hypocritically, "Cousin, come with us. You probably haven't eaten meat in a long time. I'll pay someone to kill a chicken and stew it for you. Take care of your body, and prepare for the imperial examination." "Cousin, do you really want to stay here in mediocrity for the rest of your life?" Wen Ruhua's expression was very ugly. "You're just an abandoned woman, an abandoned woman. He doesn't want you anymore, so you come looking for me, and even point fingers at me. It's not up to you to tell me what to do. What does it have to do with you whether I take the imperial examination or not? Bai Qingxiang, I'm warning you. Don't talk about the imperial examination in front of me. I won't step into the dark official path in this life. I'd rather stay here in poverty for the rest of my life," Wen Ruhua said righteously, puffing out her chest. Ning Shu was speechless. "Aren't you thinking too much? You're talking as if you can pass the exam. You're talking about a dark official career." Ning Shu was speechless. This kind of God, I'm number 2 attitude was really Chinibyu. Ning Shu's face twitched. He said, "Cousin, don't you want to be an official? Be a good official. Make decisions for the people of the world, and plead for the people of the world. Since the official path is dark, all the more you should take the imperial examination to wash away the darkness of the official world." Wen Ruhua frowned and then said, "Your words make sense. But all crows in the world are black. Since ancient times, officials have protected each other. I'm alone. If I can fight against such a big dark organization, then I'm in despair about the official world." Ning Shu looked at Wen Ruhua with some surprise. It seemed that Wen Ruhua was not really stupid. She only knew how to talk big every day. In the end, she was still afraid of the imperial examination. She was probably afraid of the imperial examination and found all kinds of reasons. There was nothing to say to this kind of person. Ning Shu was about to take Yuelon to eat when he smelled the fragrance of meat. Ning Shu's nose twitched. He turned his head and saw 2 people standing outside the fence. One of them was He Xiaohua, who was wearing a golden hairpin. He Xiaohua was carrying food in her hands. She shouted at Wen Ruhua, "Mr. Wen, I brought some food over." "Welcome, welcome. Come in quickly," Ning Shu said hurriedly. "Oh, you're the beauty that the teacher brought back. You're not bad. Why are you with such a pedantic and stupid person like Wen Ruhua?" Next to He Xiaohua was a big-hearted and fat man. He held a fan in his hand and looked very cultured. Coupled with his fat face, he was as strange as it could be. Yet he was proud of it. Ning Shu saw Qi Sheng holding a fan previously. That was called elegant. Now when he saw this guy holding a fan and holding it with his fingers that were as thick as carrots, it was an eyesore. What a sin. Chapter 162. When Ruhua looked at them and said coldly, "What are you doing here? You're not welcome here. Hidahua, Hishaohua. Even if everyone in the He village is afraid of you, I'm not afraid of you." Hishaohua, who was wearing a thick golden hairpin, felt wronged. "Mr. Wen, I just want to bring you some food. Why are you so mean to me?" Ningshu immediately said, "She's just being nice. Miss He, we're hungry. Thank you for bringing us food." When Ruhua was livid, Ningshu said, "You're not allowed to eat. I don't accept food given to me. Besides, these food were taken by the village chief." Hidahua's fat face suddenly became ferocious. She pointed at Wen Ruhua with her fan and shouted in a rough voice, "One which eye of yours saw that these food were taken by my father? Are your eyes on your butt? These food are all raised by my family. There's something wrong with your head, even your eyes." When Ruhua looked indifferent. "Who knows? Oh, my bad temper. Hishaohua, don't give these food to this kind of person. If you give it to a dog, the dog will wag its tail." Hidahua shouted at his sister, "It's a waste of food to give to this kind of person. Brother, don't say any more. Mr. Wen is not that kind of person." Hishaohua put the food on the simple stone table in the yard and said to Wen Ruhua, "Mr. Wen, you have guests in your house. You need something to serve them. Take these food as gifts for the children in school." "Tut tut tut." Ningshu looked at her and shook his head. To be honest, Hishaohua was a good girl, but she had a bad temper. Yes, thank you, Miss He. We're hungry. I'm Bai Qinxiang, Wen Ruhua's cousin. I'm here to seek refuge with my cousin," Ningshu said to Hishaohua. Hishaohua's eyes were filled with hostility. She put her hands on her waist and asked, "What's your relationship with Mr. Wen?" Ningshu asked Yuelan to sit down and eat. He answered Hishaohua, "Didn't I tell you that I'm his cousin? Don't worry, my cousin and I are just pure cousins." Hishaohua still had some doubts, but she still invited Ningshu to eat. She said to Wen Ruhua, "Mr. Wen, you should eat some too." "I won't eat it." When Ruhua turned around and entered the house, slamming the door shut, Hishaohua's face turned gloomy. Hidahua casually sat beside Ningshu like a big meatball sitting on a stone bench. Hidahua stared at Ningshu with wide eyes. "Beauty, why suffer with someone like Wen Ruhua? Why don't you go to Big Brother Dahua's house? You can live in a good house and eat meat every day. You won't have a future with someone like Wen Ruhua." Ningshu turned around and looked at the fierce-looking Hidahua, the village bully. The brother was the village bully, and the sister was the village belle. They were really outstanding. However, Ningshu found Hidahua much more pleasing to the eye than Wen Ruhua. In the plot, Hidahua wanted to send the disfigured Mu Yanluo away. To a certain extent, he sympathized with Mu Yanluo. He also had a selfish motive. His younger sister was madly in love with Wen Ruhua and wanted him to send Mu Yanluo away. Hidahua and Hishaohua were not vicious people. They were definitely kinder and more honest than Wen Ruhua. Most of the heartless people were scholars. After reading a lot of books, their bellies were full of twists and turns. Ningshu said briskly, "Thank you, Dahua. But I came here with a purpose. I want to live with my cousin." Hidahua picked up her fan and waved it. She curled her lips and said, "What kind of man is Wen Ruhua? Don't mix with him. Don't be influenced by him." Ningshu smiled and did not say anything. Ningshu and Yuelan were full. To thank Hishaohua, Ningshu took out some good rouge and silk flowers and gave them to her. "Miss, don't wear any golden hairpins. You're young. These silk flowers are more suitable for you," Ningshu said to Hishaohua. Hishaohua was very happy. She reached out and patted Ningshu's shoulder. Ningshu immediately coughed. Damn, she was too strong. "Beauty, why don't you stay with Brother Dahua? How can you live here? Even my pigsty is better than this." Hidahua fanned herself and pretended to be elegant as she said to Ningshu. Ningshu was speechless. After the He siblings left, Ningshu heard the door creak open. When Ruhua came out with a dark face, she glared at Ningshu viciously. She walked into the kitchen and used a ladle of cold water to mix with the pancakes. Ningshu was speechless. He really did not understand what Wen Ruhua was thinking. Ning Shu walked into Wen Ruhua's room and saw many books on the tattered desk. Ning Shu did not expect Wen Ruhua to be so hardworking. Randomly picking up a book and flipping through it, Ning Shu's face immediately turned green. The content of this book was a story about a down-and-out scholar and a vixen. Inside, how the vixen seduced the scholar and the erotic things that happened between them. Ning Shu was speechless. Ning Shu picked up another book and flipped through it. The content of this book was about a chivalrous hero who helped the weak and killed corrupt officials. He was loved and respected by everyone. The books on the desk were all stories about the scholar and the brothel girl, the scholar and the lady from a noble family. The descriptions were all very vulgar. It was basically an ancient pornographic novel. When Ruhua read a lot of poetry and books like these, with such books, it was reasonable that she did not take the imperial examinations. Could it be that she read these books by herself? Ning Shu suddenly felt that the marks on the desk were all from Wen Ruhua. Who allowed you to touch my things? Wen Ruhua walked in and snatched the books from Ning Shu's hands. Get out! Don't touch my books in the future. Ning Shu wiped his hands with a handkerchief. He felt that the books were dirty. He asked Wen Ruhua, "Cousin, do you usually read these books? Don't you study? How do you usually teach the children in school?" Ning Shu felt a little disgusted. He felt that Wen Ruhua was a little like a beast of a teacher. Those books are already engraved in my mind. I don't even need to read them. I just flip through these books in my free time. Wen Ruhua said faintly. There was no embarrassment on her face. You women shouldn't meddle in men's affairs. Cousin, do you like to read chivalrous books? Ning Shu asked. This great hero ignored the law and killed people as he pleased. The officials are punished according to the imperial court's laws. His actions are considered disregarding human life. Wen Ruhua snorted coldly. What do you know? The imperial court is dark. Who knows how long it will take for these corrupt officials to be unlucky? The sooner we kill the people, the less suffering they will suffer. As long as the corrupt officials are in power, the people under their jurisdiction will suffer for another day. Since the law can't punish this person, there should be a great hero to stand up for the people. Chapter 163. Ning Shu silently looked at the agitated Wen Ruhua. She had only casually said a few words, but Wen Ruhua felt as if she had been insulted. She had probably taken the role of a hero who got rid of corrupt officials and killed evil tyrants. Ning Shu felt that Wen Ruhua's character was somewhat dangerous. To put it nicely, she hated evil as if it was her enemy. To put it bluntly, she had a paranoid antisocial personality. She suddenly felt that Mu Yanluo was very noble. She sacrificed herself to subdue these sick men. Get out! You are not allowed to enter my room in the future. You are also not allowed to touch my things. People like you are not qualified to touch my things. By Qinxiang, don't challenge my bottom line. This dirty and broken thing, I don't even want to touch it. Ning Shu disdained in her heart and turned to leave. As soon as she went out, she saw the fat village tyrant holding a bunch of wild flowers that she didn't know where he had picked them. He was standing outside the fence holding the flowers. He was really stupid. Beauty, I gave you flowers. Flowers for the beauty. Hidahua saw Ning Shu and immediately came over and stuffed the flowers into Ning Shu's hands. Yuelan mocked Hidahua. This flower is so ugly. How can my young miss like it? Hidahua laughed at Yuelan. Maid Beauty, don't be angry. Next time I will make more. Yuelan snorted arrogantly and didn't speak. Humph, you're like this no matter where you go. You like to hook up with powerful men. I guess you haven't told Hidahua that you're already married, and that you're an abandoned woman. When Ruhua said sarcastically to Ning Shu, she then left with a book under her arm. She was probably going to school. Ning Shu shouted at Wen Ruhua's back. Someone gave me flowers. That means I am charming. Is it my fault that I am charming? Is it my fault? Is it my fault? When Ruhua stopped in her tracks, she turned around and roared at Ning Shu. You're so shameless, so shameless. How dare you say such words? You're worse than an animal. You shameless slut. By Qinxiang, you're getting more and more despicable. Are you throwing away everything you have? Then why don't you go to a brothel? You're in need of men anyway. These words were truly vicious. Up until now, Ning Shu still couldn't see how this Wen Ruhua had the temperament of a male lead. How could such a person be the male lead? Could it be that Mr. Plotline had forcefully added him in to make up 7 Calabash brothers? However, Wen Ruhua had the stubbornness of a male lead. The world should revolve around me. I'm not wrong, it's the world's fault. Cousin, I'm going to hang out. You have to come visit Qinxiang. After all, you've read so many stories. It's time to put them into practice, Ning Shu said sarcastically. When Ruhua was so angry that her body was trembling, she stormed off in a huff. You shameless slut. After when Ruhua left, Ning Shu said to Hidahua, thank you for the flowers. Beauty, why are you with Wen Ruhua? Hidahua had already said this countless times. Her expression was full of regret. Even if a beauty like you doesn't want to be with an outstanding man like me, you shouldn't be with a man like Wen Ruhua. Why? You hate Wen Ruhua, but your sister He Xiaohua seems to like Wen Ruhua a lot, Ning Shu said with a smile. Hidahua was instantly indignant. The fat on her face twitched. She spat in disdain and said, my sister's eyes are covered with shit. Wen Ruhua is just a pretty boy. My sister likes that face. If it weren't for the fact that I'm afraid my father will break my legs, I'd bring my sister to a brothel to see a pretty boy who's even prettier than Wen Ruhua. Ning Shu was speechless. This brother was also a weirdo. He wanted to bring his sister to a brothel. What a straightforward person. His personality was quite good, but he looked a little too shabby. If this guy was the male lead, Mu Yanlua wouldn't have suffered so much. Ning Shu nodded in agreement. Wen Ruhua is indeed a useless scholar who has achieved nothing. That's right. I finally have a confidant. Beauty, let's become sworn brothers. Hidahua wanted to reach out and hold Ning Shu's hand. Ning Shu immediately took a step back. Don't even think about taking advantage of me. Hidahua chuckled. With a swish, she opened her folding fan and fanned herself in a very showy manner. After a long time, Ning Shu and the He siblings formed some friendships. Every day, Hidahua and He Xiaohua would deliver food to him for meals. When Ning Shu said that he had a bodyguard, Hidahua very readily prepared an extra set. However, Ning Shu paid for it. After all, people in the countryside didn't have it easy. Hidahua was initially unhappy, but Ning Shu insisted, and Hidahua accepted it. Ning Shu understood that Hidahua wasn't some village tyrant that Wen Ruhua said he was. He was just a little flirtatious. When he had nothing to do, he would flirt with the girls in the village. However, he had never really made a move. But in Wen Ruhua's eyes, this was worse than a beast's behavior. He would destroy a girl's innocence and make the girl angry, but not dare to say anything. Ning Shu felt that Wen Ruhua was jealous of Hidahua's unscrupulous behavior. Wen Ruhua could only hide in his room and read pornographic books. How was his behavior more noble than Hidahua's? Wen Ruhua was stubborn. Every time the He siblings came to deliver food, he refused to eat it. After the He siblings left, he would eat some dry pancakes or thin porridge. After eating these every day, Ning Shu admired Wen Ruhua for not becoming a bag of bones. He still looked like a dog. It was too unscientific. Every time Hidahua came to Ning Shu, Wen Ruhua would have a cold face and mock Ning Shu for being shameless and wanting to seduce men. He would also mock Hidahua for being a man who picked up used shoes. Even He Xiaohua was implicated. Hidahua was a woman that no man wanted and would never be able to marry in this lifetime. Ning Shu was astonished by Wen Ruhua's actions. It was a skill for a man to be able to speak so viciously. After all, he was someone who had read a lot of books and was a scholar with a belly full of wisdom. Ning Shu and Hidahua didn't feel anything about Wen Ruhua's unpleasant words. However, He Xiaohua was very sad. Wen Ruhua was the person she liked. To be mocked and despised by the person she liked was like a hole being pierced in her heart. He Xiaohua's temper flared up. She put her hands on her hips and shouted at Wen Ruhua. How am I, He Xiaohua, bad? My father is the village chief. My family has food and drinks. I'm also very good looking. What right do you have to despise me? You're just a teacher who doesn't even have food to eat. What right do you have to despise me? Wen Ruhua, let me tell you, it's your honor that I like you. Don't be so shameless. I won't marry you even if I don't get married in this lifetime. When Ruhua said indifferently and very firmly, You, Xiaohua was so angry that she cried. She covered her face and ran away. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.